oh yes, oh yes. This Honorable General Court Justice for the State of North Carolina, the Superior Court for the County of Cumberland, is now open and sitting for the dispatch of its business. The Honorable James Floyd Ammons Jr., Judge, President and presiding. God save the state, this Honorable Court. Please be seated.
Ooh, we need a clerk.
All right, good afternoon. I apologize for being late. I was at a fundraiser for Methodist University. They call me all the time, some type of fundraiser to go to. Where's my clerk?
She's coming. You're gonna sit right up here, and you are our clerk today. Right up there.
You have the file?
She's gonna just hand you a piece of paper because we didn't bring the big paper.
All right. Is this a civil case?
Criminal case.
Criminal case? Nobody told me. All right. I see y'all have already picked a jury. Lord have mercy. All right, if the lawyers would identify themselves and tell me who's in charge. We'll start over here. Tell me your name.
Caleb Thompson.
Taylor?
Caleb.
Okay. How you spell that first name? Yeah, it's easier to talk with that out of your mouth, isn't it? How do you spell your first name?
C-A-L-E-B.
Thompson.
T-H-O-M-P-S-O.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
Chesney Novo,
First name?
C-H-A-S-M-A-I-N-N. O-G-O. O-G-O.
Is that it? Okay.
Ricky Brayboy.
Thank you.
Ricky Brayboy.
Okay.
And Taylor Murphy.
Taylor Murphy.
Yes, sir. Yes, Your Honor.
And who's the lead counsel here?
I am.
Mr. Brayboy, who's your client?
Client.
Mm-hmm.
You're prosecuting?
Oh, this is a criminal case, right?
Yes, sir.
So who's your client?
State of North Carolina.
All right, very good. All right, we'll start over here.
Kara Hendricks.
Carrie,
Kara.
how do you spell that?
C-A-R-A.
Hendricks,
H-E-N-D-R-I-C-K-S.
okay.
Megan Jones.
Is it Megan or Megan?
Megan, M-E-G-A-N, J-O-N-E-S.
Okay.
Jordan Godwin.
And who's y'all's client? Who's the lead counsel here?
I am, Your Honor.
Okay, who's your client?
Our client is Elizabeth Shannon. I'm sorry,
John.
John Shannon. Whoops.
Okay. Now, is Elizabeth Shannon present in the court? Does she have an attorney also?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, who's her attorney?
I am.
Okay, she didn't have she didn't have private counsel?
Your Honor, Elizabeth Shannon reached a plea deal prior to
Okay, all right,
trial.
that's fine. I'm glad we sent the jury out before we started talking about all this. And tell me, Mr. Brayboy, what the charges are.
Yes, sir. State of North Carolina versus Joan Shannon on the charge of first-degree murder.
Is that it?
Yes, sir.
State ready?
Yes, sir, we are.
Defense ready?
We are, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the jury, swapping out jurors.
Yeah.
Rick on Ramsey Street.
We don't usually lose alternates this quick, but sit together, listen to the evidence that's about to come out. There'll be times that I may ask you to leave the courtroom. Don't worry about that. Don't talk about this case among yourselves or with anyone else, and stay away from me and the lawyers and the witnesses and the parties. All right. What do you want to do first?
Open the statement, Your Honor.
All right. Will there be an opening statement for the state?
Yes, sir.
All right. You may proceed.
May I approach the jury?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. As Mr. Shannon did time after time, he woke up, went to work. He went to his daily routine, his fixated schedule. but he did not know what events would occur that night. That night, Mr. David Shannon was shot and killed in his own home while sleeping. Mr. Shannon was a family man and a major in the Army. A man that fought for his country in the cyber realm. And he lost his life brutally. He took a shot in the head and a shot in the chest. With no time to defend himself, because he was sleeping, of course. Mr. Shannon will never know what it's like to wake up the next morning and put on his uniform. He will never know what it's like to enjoy the company of his kids. During this case, we're going to present to you evidence that leads to the prosecution of Ms. Jones Shannon. It all boils down to greed, love, and sex, in which all qualities Ms. Jones Shannon holds. The defense is going to try to obscure the facts and is going to try to make Elizabeth more of a less honorable person, a delinquent. But in all reality, she was actually just a normal teenage child. The blood has been spilled, and it is y'all's job to take in the facts of this case and bring justice for Mr. David Shannon's death. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Will there be a opening at this time for the defense, or do you want to reserve?
Yes, Your Honor. May I have permission to move about the courtroom?
Okay. Yes, sure.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today you hold a woman's life in your hands. The responsibility of her fate lies with you. To carry out this responsibility, you must listen to witness testimony carefully. You must scrutinize the evidence. But most importantly, you must keep an open mind. My name is Megan Jones, and I will be representing the defense. And I would like to thank you, along with my co-counsel, Jordan Godwin and Kara Hendrick, for being here with us today. You will hear from 3 witnesses representing the defense today. First, you will hear from Brenda Strong, David Shannon's loving sister, who will explain to you just how much the Shannons adore Joan. She will describe to you that no matter how hard Joan or David tried, they just could not provide Elizabeth with the type of parenting that she needed. Next, you will hear from a social worker that was on Elizabeth Shannon's case during Elizabeth's time at an alternative school. She will describe to you that Elizabeth started to go down a very bad road while at this school. And lastly, you will hear from Joan Shannon, David Shannon's wife, a working mother, an adored sister-in-law and daughter-in-law. She will share with you the horrible, horrific night that she had to endure back in July of 2002. It is the responsibility of the state to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Joan Shannon intentionally and deliberately with hatred in her heart, killed her husband, David Shannon. However, if they fail to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that my client committed this murder, you all will return with a ruling in her favor. It is your responsibility today to carry out the law and at the end of the day, reach an agreement. Thank you.
All right, call your first witness.
Your Honor, the state would like to call Carrie Sonnen.
Give me a vote. Put your left hand on the Bible. Raise your right. Face the clerk over here. I'll give you the oath.
She'll do it. You promise to tell the truth, the whole truth?
You just
You promise to tell the whole truth and
Let me do the first one, and she can do it after
Okay.
that. You promise that the testimony that you're about to give in this case will be completely false, made up, and not true?
No, sir.
You're supposed to say yes.
Oh, yes,
Put
sir.
them on.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Got it? We're doing that while we do the next. All right, Mr. Bell, tell them where to go. Go ahead and write it out. All right, may proceed.
Good afternoon. Would you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the court your name, please?
My name is Carrie Sonnen.
And what is it that you do, Carrie?
I work for the Fayetteville Police Department as a forensic technician.
Please tell the court your educational background.
I have a bachelor's degree in forensic science, criminal justice. I graduated from Methodist University in 1990, also with a legal studies minor.
How long have you been working with the Fayetteville Police Department?
I have been working with the Fayetteville Police Department since 1990, which is about 25 years.
Have you had any special training or certifications pertinent to your position with the police department?
Yes, due to my job, my educational background required lots of forensic photography classes, dealing with analyzing DNA, firearms, and looking at the evidence and making sure that it gets entered in properly.
Does your role within an investigation go any further than just at the crime scene?
Yes, also most of the time I'm called to testify against what I saw at the crime scene.
Thank you. Did you take pictures at the scene of this crime?
I did.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes, ma'am.
States exhibits 1 through 9. It's just the pictures. Are these the pictures that you took at the crime scene?
Yes, ma'am.
Are they, sorry. Are they a true and accurate portrayal of the crime scene?
Yes, ma'am.
We're gonna go through one by one, and if you could describe to the court, what is in each photo.
Okay.
So this is exhibit 1.
Okay, exhibit 1 was simply a shell casing.
You should probably go up there.
Objection. Y'all know what I want them to do? Okay. Y'all huddle up and figure out and see if you know what I want you to do. I want you to say objection.
No, we got that part, we just don't know objection.
Then say objection.
Objection.
Okay. What's your objection? What are the grounds?
Lack of foundation.
Perfect. Sustained.
Sustained is not objection.
Might want to ask her some more questions.
Okay. These are the pictures that you took at the scene of the crime?
Yes, ma'am.
How many pictures did you take at the scene of the crime?
About 10.
And what were these pictures to show?
These pictures were just to show the environment of the house, how they lived, also wounds that were intact on the victim. Just, that's about it.
Your Honor, may I have the witness describe each photo as taken?
Do you want to introduce them into evidence?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so offer them into evidence.
I'd like to offer these into evidence.
Denied. You got some magic words you need to ask. We talked about this. Just relax, take a breath, go talk to your co-counsel, see if they can help you. Y'all need to talk to and figure out, if you can figure out, see if y'all can figure out why sustains the objection that I wanted y'all to make.
We're gonna have an interactive jury, so Ryan or Josh, could you give them, Taylor, some magical words, since you're both practicing attorneys, of what you think, or Mr. Baker, what you think that the magical words that Taylor might wanna use to get these pictures in?
Well, you might want to ask if the witness recognizes them all, if anything about them has changed since last she saw them, and if they would be useful to her in her testimony to illustrate things she's going to say.
Let's try that.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I have pictures.
Sure.
Do you recognize all of these photos?
Yes, ma'am.
Has anything changed about them since the last time that you've seen them?
No, ma'am.
Do you think that these will help you in describing the crime scene to the court?
Of course.
Your Honor, may I enter the state's exhibits 1 through 9 into evidence?
And do they appear to be a fair and accurate representation of what you took pictures of?
Yes, sir.
Y'all object?
Kara.
No, Your Honor.
Good.
Would you please describe state's exhibit number 1?
Okay, state exhibit number 1 was the shell casing that we found on the right side of the bed, which is where the victim was sleeping. Also beside it, you can see some pornographic material that they were into a lot. It was found all over the house, but that's all that's in exhibit number 1.
Would you describe exhibit number 2, please?
Exhibit number 2 is just a close-up of the shell casing. It just shows with the ruler the measurements of the shell casing.
State exhibit number 3.
This is the second shell casing, again with the ruler to show how large the evidence was.
Exhibit 4.
Exhibit 4 was to demonstrate, again, the pornographic material that they had lying around. Also, just the disarray that the house was in when we entered the crime scene.
Number 5.
Again, number 5, the house was in complete disarray. As you can see, there's clothing everywhere in no particular order. It was very, as you would call it, messy.
Exhibit 6.
Exhibit 6 was the large amount of pornographic material that we found hidden under the beds and all over the home of the Shannon's household.
Exhibit 7.
Exhibit 7 is the gunshot wound to the head. This was taken during the medical examination. It was a close-up, so we could just see how it was a close bullet wound to the head.
Exhibit 8.
Exhibit 8 is another close-up, but this was taken at the scene. So it was a fresh bullet wound. You can see the gunshot powder residue that lies around the wound.
And state's exhibit number 9.
Exhibit number 9 is going to be the bullet wound to the chest where he was shot in the chest. Again, you can see that it's a close wound due to the gunshot powder residue.
Your Honor, I'd like to enter these into evidence and publish them to the jury.
Okay. The objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, you want to pass them among the jury?
We thought
Mr.
it might be
Mayor.
for time reasons that we'll give the pictures to the jury when they go out to
Okay,
the jury.
let me see.
But we're gonna keep them on the table when you're done with them.
Okay.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Couldn't get that one focused?
Well, I didn't want to have to go buy a bunch of porn magazines, so I had to take a picture of a picture. Good thing my
Any
husband-
additional questions?
No, Your Honor.
All right. You may proceed.
Now, Ms. Dornan, is it correct that Kimball contacted you at 4:07 a.m. on July 3rd, 23rd?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, who?
Detective Kimball.
Oh, okay.
And did you advise him to do a gunshot residue kit on all the occupants at the house?
Yes.
And did you advise Kimball to give permission to do this? You gave Kimball permission?
Gave the detective permission?
Yes.
I mean, he doesn't need permission, but it was done.
So he knew to give the occupants of the house permission. He knew that they needed permission.
Correct.
And so it's my understanding you were not located at the crime scene when the forensic evidence of the gunshot residue kit was obtained?
I was there.
You were at the residence.
Correct.
So why did Kimball have to call you if you were at the residence?
Okay, I think there may have been a misunderstanding. For the gunshot residue test, he took the testing and I gave him the permission to do it because I was not there.
Okay, so you weren't at the residence, at the crime
Correct.
scene? Okay. Now, on July 23rd at 8:05 that morning, you conducted a search at 611 Galloway Drive, correct?
Correct.
And do you remember who you conducted this search with?
Coworkers, not any names in particular.
Okay. And my understanding that when you were at the premises, you took photos of the crime scene, correct?
Right.
And so it's your responsibility to enter these photos that you took of the crime scene into evidence, right?
Yes.
And you did enter these photos into evidence?
Yes.
So if you properly enter these photos in evidence, why aren't these evidence in the police report?
I'm sorry, why
I'm
aren't
sorry,
these-
I don't understand the question.
I didn't either.
Are these evidence in the police report? Yes?
You understand the question?
Not really.
The pictures that you took of the crime
I
scene.
understand the question, I don't
These.
know. Right.
Yes. Are they in the police report?
I'm not aware of any police report.
You're not aware of the police report that the detectives took of the crime scene?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. So if you did have a police report, you would enter those photos of the crime scene that you took, you would enter those into evidence.
Correct.
Okay. May I approach the witness?
You need these?
If you were to enter these photos and correctly into the evidence, which we don't have, you would enter them into something that looks like this?
We were not required to have a log, actually.
So it's not protocol for a forensic technician to enter forensic evidence of photos
Your Honor,
into.
I have to take her off this questioning because I told the prosecutors they did not have to create a log for this jury
Okay, let's move on to another
for
area.
time reasons.
Thank you.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Any redirect? When did the decedent open his eyes?
It was during. That was the medical examiner's test. The medical examiner.
And Judge Abrams,
The medical.
those are based on
Those
the
are the
actual
real pictures. I
Those are
promise
actual real
you.
pictures
I
that the
promise
state
you.
took. Yeah, they're actually the real pictures.
They really are. They really are.
All right.
No, but the ones that they found, those were based on real pictures.
Any other questions for this witness? All right, you may come down. Call your next witness.
State call, take Mike Murphy to the stand.
Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated.
State your name for the court, Mr. Murray.
Detective Mike Murphy.
Tell me about yourself, Mr. Murphy.
I've been a detective for the Fayetteville Police Department for about 15 years now. Graduated from Methodist University with a bachelor's degree in Justice Studies in 1987.
Can you say how many cases you worked on, Mr. Murphy?
I can't state the exact number. I'd say well over 100.
Is there any other specified training you went through?
Yes, sir. Basic law enforcement training.
Can you tell the court what basic law enforcement training is?
It's a 9-month training process where you learn everything necessary to be a police officer, things such as riot control, how to handle a firearm, how to handle a taser, how to handle pepper spray, how to go about a criminal, how to investigate a criminal case, how to arrest procedures, things of that nature.
So can we say you're an expert in your field, Mr. Murphy?
I wouldn't say I'm an expert. I would say that I have worked many cases.
Can you explain to me what happened on July 23rd, 2002?
On July 23rd, 2002, I received a call from Sergeant Charles Kimball telling me that I needed to respond to 611 Galloway Drive to report to a potential home invasion and homicide, and the deceased was David Shannon.
What was the first thing you did when arriving to the crime scene?
First thing I did was to inform Joan Shannon that I would be the lead detective in the case.
Did you ever approach Mrs. Shannon before entering the crime scene?
Yes, I did.
What were the details of that conversation?
I informed her that we would need to conduct normal procedure, things such as a gunshot residue test kit, and I would need her to go down to the police station following my conversation with her.
Did you ask Mrs. Shannon, did she fire a weapon recently?
Yes, I did.
How did she respond to that question?
She responded that she had not fired a weapon recently.
After talking to Mrs. Shannon, did you enter the house?
Yes, I did.
What? Can you describe the state of the house?
The house was in complete disarray. There was dirty clothing all over the floor. There were dirty dishes in the kitchen, dirty dishes in the sink, on the
Objection,
table.
Your Honor. Relevance?
What's the relevance of this?
Your Honor, the detective is simply trying to set the scene of the crime and describe the environment in which he ended up approached and entered.
Overruled.
Who secured the crime scene, Detective?
The officers immediately responded to the crime scene and secured the crime scene.
Upon entering the house, did you see the body of Mr. David Shannon?
Yes, I did.
Can you describe what you saw?
David Shannon was lying on his back, arms across his stomach, with an apparent gunshot wound to the center of the chest and an apparent gunshot wound to the center of the forehead.
After exiting the house, did you speak with anyone else?
Yes, I did.
Who did you speak with, Mr. Murphy?
Elizabeth Shannon.
What were the details of that conversation?
I informed Elizabeth Shannon that we would need to conduct a procedural gunshot residue test on her person as well, and that I would need her to come down to the police station for further questioning.
How did you proceed with the investigation when you left the crime scene?
I proceeded to interview Joan Shannon at the police station.
How did you begin your interview with Mrs. Shannon?
I asked Joan Shannon to tell me about herself, tell me about her family, just to try to build a relationship with her.
What did she tell you about herself?
She told me that she was happily married. She told me that she had dropped out of high school in the 11th grade, but gotten a GED. She told me that she had 4 children.
Did you at any time ask her about the night of the murder?
Yes, I did.
How did she describe the night of the murder?
She described the night of the murder as her and her husband went to bed. They watched a movie. After watching the movie, they participated in sexual intercourse. The next thing she remembers was falling asleep and then being awakened with her ears ringing and seeing a shadowy figure standing over her husband, hearing the sound of what she believed to be another gunshot, and then observing the shadowy figure leave the room.
Did she see the person well enough to give a description to you?
She did not. She said the only thing that she told us was that she believed the person was a male and it was a shadowy figure.
Did Mrs. Shannon say if she went after the perpetrator?
Yes, she did.
Did she catch him or at any
She did
point?
not. She said in her statement to me that she started after the offender and then realized that her children were in the house and proceeded to check on her children.
Did Mrs. Shannon say if there was any sign of a break-in?
She did not.
Okay. After getting the details of the murder, did you at any point ask Mrs. Shannon of her relationship with her husband?
Yes, I did.
What did she say about her relationship?
She said that they had an open marriage.
For the court, how did she classify or describe an open marriage?
She described it as her and her husband were into swinging.
Did she describe swinging to you?
Yes, sir, she did.
How did she describe swinging?
She described swinging as meeting other couples online to participate in group sex with the other couples.
How long did Mrs. Shannon say her and her husband had been swinging?
Since 1998.
At any time did she say that she developed any feelings for any of her sexual partner?
Yes, she did.
Who was that? Did she tell you who that individual was?
Yes, sir.
Who was that individual?
Jeff Wilson.
How did she describe her relationship with Mr. Wilson?
She described her relationship as her and Jeff Wilson being in love.
After questioning Mrs. Shannon, how did you proceed with your investigation?
I went on to question Elizabeth Shannon.
Before leaving the questioning of Miss Elizabeth Shannon, Miss Jones Shannon, can you describe what state of mind she seemed to be in at the point, at the time of the interview?
During her interview,
Yeah.
she seemed to be in a stable mindset. She kept stating that she needed to see her husband. She said that she needed her husband at the interview with her. They had a
Objection, Your
good
Honor,
marriage.
speculation.
Overall.
So moving on to Elizabeth Shannon, how did you begin your questioning of Elizabeth Shannon?
The same way that I began my questioning with Joan Shannon, I asked her to tell me about herself, how she was getting ready to go into high school, she described how she liked to talk to friends on the phone, how she liked to spend time with friends and listen to music.
In your opinion, did Elizabeth act like a normal teenager?
Yes, sir.
Objection, Your Honor, he is not an expert witness.
Want to respond to that?
Yes, sir, Your Honor. The detective was simply answering to the best of his ability and of the mindset of Elizabeth at the time of the incident.
Oh.
Did you ask Elizabeth about the night of the murder?
Yes, I did.
What did she say about the night of the murder?
She said that her and her friend who was spending the night went to bed, and the next thing she remembers was being awakened by a police officer knocking at her bedroom door.
At any point, did she say she heard anything out of the ordinary?
No, sir.
Did Elizabeth say why she did not hear the gunshots?
She said that was because she had loud music playing in her room.
At any time, did you find this quite odd that she did not hear the gunshots?
Yes, sir, I did.
Why did you find this odd?
Elizabeth Shannon's bedroom is right next to her parent bedroom.
Okay, Mr. Burns. Let me take you back before John and Elizabeth's question and to the crime scene. Is there any procedures or tests performed on the people that were in the house?
Yes, sir, gunshot residue test kit.
What is the gunshot residue test?
A gunshot residue test is performed at every shooting scene. It's a way of taking a sample of the people's hands at the crime scene to determine whether they fired a firearm recently.
Did you receive the results of the gunshot residue test?
Yes, I did.
Before answering that, before proceeding, let me take you back to earlier in your testimony. What did Elizabeth Shannon state about firing a firearm?
She said she had not fired a firearm recently.
If Elizabeth did not fire a weapon, as she stated, what should the results show?
The result should show negative that she has not fired a weapon recently.
What were the results of the test?
They were negative, indicating that she had not fired a weapon recently.
Okay. Earlier in your testimony, what did Joan Shannon state about firing a weapon?
She stated that she had not fired a weapon recently.
So the gunshot residue test should indicate that she had not fired a weapon recently, if she's telling the truth?
That is correct.
What were the results of the test?
The results of the test were positive, indicating that she had fired a weapon recently.
No further questions.
Y'all's witness.
Detective Murphy, what year did you say you graduated from Methodist University?
1987.
And what degree did you have?
Justice Studies.
Okay. So you performed a gunshot residue test on Joan Shannon on the morning of July 23rd?
I did not perform the test. The forensic technician at the crime scene performed the test.
In your police report, it says that you performed the test, correct?
I ordered the test to be performed.
But it says you performed the test, correct? In your police report.
I believe that I had the test ordered to be performed.
Okay. Did you ask Joan for consent to perform this test?
Yes, I did.
You did?
Yes.
Are you sure about that?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes, ma'am.
So, what does this say right here?
You would like me to read that?
Yes, please.
Joan Shannon was
Objection, Your Honor.
Staying.
Oh, sorry. It's just the police report.
Joan Shannon was informed that I needed to test her hands to ensure that she had not fired a weapon.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
For what?
Megan.
You can have him read it to himself, and then you can ask him questions about it. Or if you want to introduce it at this time, if you can lay the proper foundation, you can introduce it and then have him read from it out loud.
Okay, well, can you please read that to yourself, please? Okay, that's fine. So it says, Joan Shannon was informed that I needed to test her hands to ensure that she has not fired a gun, correct?
Correct.
But it never says that she was asked for consent, correct?
Correct.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but if a person is not asked for consent, you do need a search warrant, correct?
Correct.
And was there a search warrant for Joan Shannon's?
There was not.
So, okay. That's Moving on. Did you perform other gunshot residue tests on other people that night?
Yes, I did.
And that was Vera and Elizabeth, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So earlier you talked about questioning Joan Shannon the morning of the 23rd,
Yes,
correct?
I did.
Do you remember who else questioned Mrs. Shannon with you?
I do not.
Okay. In your police report, you asked Joan, and I quote, feeling for if she had developed any feeling for individuals she was having a sexual relationship with, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
However, you did not specify to her what you meant by feeling, did you?
That is correct.
Detective Murphy, in your experience in law enforcement and on other crime scenes, would you say that you have ever interpreted things differently than your other coworkers?
I would say that every crime scene is different, and it can be interpreted in many different ways between different law enforcement.
Okay. So would you say that it may have been possible that Joan Shannon could have interpreted the word feeling differently than you could have interpreted it?
I would say that it's possible.
Okay. So you arrested Joan Shannon on July 30th, 2002, correct?
I believe that is the date.
Okay. And what were the exact charges that you were arresting her for?
Conspiracy to commit murder and first-degree murder.
Okay. And when did you receive the gunshot residue test results back?
I cannot be sure to the exact date.
Okay, well, it was October 9th, 2002. So you arrested someone July 30th, and you did not receive the test results back until October 9th. Is that something that usually happens very often?
We had more than enough evidence, other than the gunshot residue test kit, to arrest Joan Shannon.
Can you tell me what that other evidence was?
There was, she had life insurance policies taken on her husband. We had witness statements.
So life insurance policies, that's like, people have life insurance policies taken out every day?
Let him finish his answer, then you can ask another question.
We had other witnesses' testimony that we believe Joan Shannon was the person who killed her husband.
Okay. So do you just arrest people on witness testimony?
Objection, Your Honor. She's badgering our witness.
Overruled, he can answer that.
Can you restate the question, please?
Do you arrest people for murder on witness testimony alone, like every day? Is that a common thing?
If we believe that it is substantial evidence, yes, we do.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
I'm confused. How many gunshot residue tests did you do?
There were three. Joan Shannon, Elizabeth Shannon, and Vera Thompson.
And what did Joan Shannon show?
That she had fired a weapon recently.
What did Elizabeth Shannon show?
That she had not fired a weapon recently.
All right, any questions based on the questions the court asked?
At this time, I would like to make a motion for the gunshot residue test kit of Joan Shannon to be thrown out.
Okay, send the jury out. They're out. You just keep your seats. Try not to see anything or hear anything. I think the jury's confused too. Let's give them some pencils so they can take notes.
Never mind, Your Honor.
I never do. Any questions?
No, Your Honor.
All right, we through with this witness?
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mike. You can come down.
That's coming up later.
I think we need one on the back row back there. All right, next witness.
State called Detective Charles Kimball to the stand.
Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do. your name?
Detective Charles Kimball.
Tell me about yourself, Mr. Kimball.
I graduated from Methodist University with a Justice Studies major in 1994.
How long have you been on the force?
About 8 years, 3 years on road patrol, 5 years as a detective.
How many cases have you worked on?
I would say over 100 or more.
Is there any other training you went through?
Basic law enforcement training.
So the court can take you as an expert witness?
I wouldn't say I'm an expert.
Objection, Your Honor. He doesn't get to decide if he's an expert.
The objection to the question?
Objection to the whole premise behind the question. He's allowing the witness to decide if he's an expert in the field or not.
Okay, well, I don't like the question either, so I agree with you, sustained.
Thank you.
Let's move on.
What was your part in the Shannon case, Mr. Kimball?
I assisted Detective Murphy and interviewed Faye Thompson and Jeffrey Wilson.
Can you tell the court who contacted you on July 21st, 2002?
Faye Thompson did.
Who is Faye Thompson?
Vera Thompson's mother.
What were the details of the phone conversation with Mrs. Thompson?
About 6 to 8 weeks ago, Vera Thompson told her mother that she overheard John
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Sustained.
After receiving the phone call, what did you do next in your investigation?
Contacted Jeffrey Wilson.
How did you start your questioning with Mr. Wilson?
I asked him could he come down to a police station and to be interviewed, that his name had popped up in the investigation.
Did he mention the position you had in the Army?
No, he did not. But he worked at a hospital, military hospital, Walmart.
How long has he known the Shannons?
About 8 months.
How'd they meet?
Well, Mrs. Shannon's husband, David Shannon, contacted him on a swinging website called Gangbang.
So this was a sexual website?
Yes, it was.
And did Mr. Wilson say he participated in sex with Ms. Jones Shannon?
Yes, he did.
Did you ask how often they met for sex?
Yes, I did.
How often did they meet?
About 3 to 4 times a week.
Where would they meet?
At Tony's business house, at the Shannon's residence, and in her van.
How long did their relationship last?
About 4 months.
Did Mr. Wilson say why his relationship lasted so long with Ms. Shannon?
It was just for sex.
Did he say if Joan Shannon got emotionally involved?
Yes, she did.
When asking Mr. Wilson if Joan Shannon wanted to leave her husband, how did she reply?
She said she wanted to, but she couldn't because David Shannon was her financial backbone.
Let me ask a question. How's this hearsay different than the other hearsay he objected to?
It's not.
Okay, that's fine.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay. Speculation, lack of personal knowledge, everything.
I mean, there may be a strategy, I don't know.
I was just going to wait and get him later, but
Is Mr. Wilson going to testify?
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, give you a limiting instruction. What this witness says that another witness said is only offered to corroborate that testimony. Obviously, we can't have them come on but one at a time. So when Mr. Wilson testifies, if what he says is corroborated by this, you can take this testimony only as it corroborates that. Please do not take anything that this witness says that Mr. Wilson said for the truth of the matter asserted. All right, you may proceed.
Did Mr. Wilson say if he had spoken to Mrs. Shannon after the homicide?
Yes, very briefly over the phone.
Did he at any time say why the conversations were so brief?
She told that the police would be looking into her.
objection, Your Honor. Is this hearsay going to be allowed under your previous ruling, or do I need to object to all the future hearsay that happens?
this is a, well, anytime you feel like you need to make an objection, you need to, but is this testimony is what the defendant said, right?
Yeah.
That's not hearsay.
Okay, thank you.
May I proceed?
Yeah.
The police would be looking to her phone records because of the life insurance policies that David Shannon had out.
Upon questioning Mr. Wilson, did you ask him if he knew of any problems in Joan and David's marriage?
Yes, I did.
What did he state that he knew?
Stated that there was a domestic form filled out either for David Shannon or Joan Shannon, but he didn't know exactly for who.
Did he say how he knew this information?
He said he overheard it.
Objection, Your Honor. He's asking the witness to testify as to what somebody else knew.
Overruled, it sounds kind of interesting, let's hear it anyway.
No further questions, Your Honor.
See, objection worked. Who's gonna cross?
I am, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Now, Detective Kimball, you completed basic law enforcement training, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You've had many years on the force, right?
Yes, sir.
So in theory, you should understand the basics of how to arrest somebody. Isn't that a true statement?
If you want to say so.
I'm asking you, is that what you say, yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, on August 2nd, 2002, you arrested Elizabeth Shannon, isn't that correct?
I did not.
You did not arrest
I was
Elizabeth Shannon?
assisting Detective Murphy.
So you had no part of arresting Elizabeth Shannon?
I was assisting him. I was probably there, but I cannot specify.
Would it help if you saw your statement again?
Yes, it would.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Sure.
Thank you. Do you recognize this document?
Yes, sir.
This is your police report, is it not?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Now, right here, I just want you to follow along as I read it aloud. On August 2nd, 2002,
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. He can't read it, and you can't read it either unless you want to introduce it. And you got to be able to verify it and have proper foundation. However, if you want him to read it and then you want to ask questions about it, you can do that.
you recognize this document, do you not?
Yes, I do.
We'd have to read it to himself, though.
Okay. And since you recognize this document, I'd like you to read this to yourself, this entire paragraph right here.
Okay.
And isn't it true that in that paragraph that you wrote on your police report, it says,
Well, the proper question would be, does this refresh your memory as to what was happening, and then you can ask him what really happened.
thank you. Does this adequately reflect your recollections to events that occurred?
It does.
Thank you. Now, isn't it true that on August 2nd, 2002, you assisted in the arrest of Elizabeth Shannon?
Yes.
Isn't it true that in this report that you wrote that you found Elizabeth Shannon hiding in the living room?
Yes.
That you apprehended Elizabeth Shannon?
Yes.
And then that you transported her back to the police station?
Yes.
And you apprehended her at 13:10, which is 1:10 p.m. in the afternoon, right?
Yes.
And then at 2:16 p.m. you advised her of her rights, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. So just to make sure I and the rest of this court understand correctly, you arrested Elizabeth Shannon at 1:16, and then you Mirandized her at 2:16, correct?
Yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, no, Your Honor.
All right, you may come down and call your next witness.
State calls Detective Thomas Baker to the stand.
You promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
So help me God.
State your name.
Detective Thomas Baker.
Tell me about yourself, Mr. Baker.
I've been with the Fayetteville Police Department for about 10 years now. Graduated from Methodist University with a bachelor's degree in Justice Studies.
Is there any other training you went through?
Yes, sir. I went through basic law enforcement training like most officers do when arriving to any police department. Upon graduation, I went and worked K-9 units for 6 years and then became a detective for the last 4.
What was your role in this case?
I was personally tasked with interviewing and talking to Vera Thompson.
Throughout the investigation, did you ever enter the crime scene?
Yes, sir.
Can you describe the crime scene to the court?
The crime scene was disgusting. There was food on the counters. There was messy clothes everywhere. There was pornography material just laying around the house.
Upon the first questioning of Ms. Vera Thompson, how did you begin?
I asked her just to tell me about herself.
What did she tell you about herself?
She told me she was excited to be attending Westover High School this coming fall. She said she was just an overall nice girl.
Did you ask her how long she knew Elizabeth?
Yes, sir.
How long did she say she knew Elizabeth?
She said she had known Elizabeth Shannon for 1 year to 1.5 years, and they had just recently, about 2 months ago, been hanging out.
I'm sorry, what was the name of the person she knew?
Elizabeth Shannon.
Okay.
Did you ask her about the night of the murder?
Yes, sir, I did.
Mrs. Vera was present the night of the murder?
Yes, sir.
How did she describe the night?
She said it was like any normal night. She got picked up by Elizabeth and her mother, Joan, and they arrived to their house. And upon arrival to the house, her and Elizabeth went to Elizabeth's room and closed the door. She doesn't recall around what time Miss Joan Shannon came in and told them they were going to bed, and she took a shower and went to sleep.
What was her reasoning on why she did not hear anything the night of the murder?
She said that she slept like a log.
You questioned Vera Thompson for a second time on July 21st, 2002?
Yes, sir.
When you asked Vera if she knew who killed David Shannon, how did she respond?
She hesitated for a second and then told me yes, and I told her you need to be 100% truthful with me, and I told her I didn't believe she was telling me the truth.
Did you ever at any point ask Vera about Mrs. Shannon and her husband's relationship?
Yes, sir.
What did she state?
She stated that it was a good marriage, and from what she could tell.
How did Vera describe Elizabeth and Joan's relationship?
She said that they were the best of friends, and that as long as Joan Shannon knew what Elizabeth was doing, everything was okay.
Can you tell me what happened on July 29th, 2002?
Yes, sir. I received a call from a CI, which is a crime informant, stating that he knew the whereabouts of a young female who knew who killed Mr. Shannon.
Did you follow up on the lead?
Yes, sir, you did. Yes, sir, I did.
Did you locate that person?
Yes, sir. I found her inside a trailer.
Who was that person?
Vera Thompson, sir.
When Vera was found, what did she begin discussing with you?
She began telling me in a sworn statement about the murder and who killed Mr. Shannon.
Did she say what her role in the murder was?
She said her role was to help get rid of the murder weapon.
Why was Vera brought in again on July 30th?
We asked her to help us locate the murder weapon and who she gave it to get rid of.
Who did she give the murder weapon?
She claims it was a Derek Humphrey.
Who is Derek Humphrey?
He is a man that just knew the girls as somewhat of a friend, and that was, I guess, used by Vera Thompson, her statement saying that he was used to get rid of the gun.
At any point in the investigation, did you question Derek Humphrey?
Yes, sir, I did.
What information did he present you?
He told me he had sold the gun to a guy named Stretch in Lumberton, North Carolina.
Did you try to locate this Stretch?
Yes, sir.
Did you find him?
Yes, sir. After I received a phone call, we didn't find him when we first arrived to Lumberton, North Carolina. It was after we got back that I received a phone call of a possible person who was nicknamed Stretch.
What did you ask him when he was found?
I asked him where the murder weapon was, and we told him why he was being brought in. He said he didn't understand why he was being brought in because he never purchased a murder weapon.
In your opinion, at this point in the investigation, Do you believe that gun had been well disposed of?
Yes, sir.
No further questions.
Detective Baker, is it true that you helped with a search warrant on July 23rd at 8:05?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you tell me what you found?
We found a briefcase. We found 56 VHS tapes, miscellaneous papers, magazines, 2 live Luger rounds. So I cannot specify all of the findings because of the fact that I worked so many numerous cases.
Is it true, excuse me, that you did find guns while this search was going on?
Yes, ma'am, but they were not related to this case because they did not match the millimeter rounds found inside the victim.
But you did find a 357 caliber found in a dresser, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you found a 22 caliber found in a closet.
Yes, ma'am.
Objection, Your Honor, relevance?
Overall.
So you did find these guns
Yes, ma'am.
in the house.
Yes, ma'am.
And were these guns in the open?
No, ma'am.
But were they locked up?
Yes, ma'am. Some of them were, not all of them.
But they were in a dresser, in a closet.
Yes, ma'am.
Was anybody possibly capable of getting to these guns?
Possibly.
Possibly. Okay. Now, on July 23rd at 4:46 p.m., you received a telephone call from Tim Mabe, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And Tim Mabe is David's neighbor, correct?
That is correct.
And he told you that he works for ATF, correct?
That is correct.
And is it correct that he mentioned possible suspects to you if you didn't have any?
Yes, Your Honor.
And these
That would be me.
and these suspects consisted of David's daughter's friends, correct?
Correct. He said for us to possibly look at her friends because there was a lot of traffic flow from in and around the house.
A lot of what?
Traffic flow.
Okay.
Is it correct that he gave you a license plate number?
Not that I can recall.
Not that you can recall. And well, you received a license plate, and is it correct that it was a white Chevrolet, possibly?
That is correct.
Okay. And is it correct that you didn't follow this lead?
That is very correct.
Is it correct that you didn't follow a lead, maybe a possible suspect, anything?
We didn't follow the lead because at the time we kind of figured who our suspects were. We were going with those possible leads at first. If all leads had been extinguished, then yes, we would have followed that lead.
And on July 24th at 4:30 p.m., you received a telephone call about the autopsy from Dr. Gassie Kraft, correct?
That is correct. She was calling me to inform me that there was 2 gunshot wounds locating the victim, 1 in the chest and 1 in the head.
And is it correct that she told you that these wounds followed a straight line?
That is very correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Your Honor.
Okay. All right, next witness.
Your Honor, State Clause Derek Humphrey.
You promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
You may be seated.
Can you state your name for the record?
Derek Humphrey.
And what do you do?
I work at Methodist University as a public safety officer.
Mr. Humphrey, can you tell us how you know Elizabeth Shannon?
I met them, I was driving down the street and happened to see them. And then I went to my house and I called them. I called them over to my backyard. I was at my friend's and we started talking.
And when you say you called them, who's them?
Elizabeth Shannon and Bill Thompson.
When Elizabeth Shannon had approached your backyard, what were you guys talking about?
She was talking about getting rid of a gun.
And after you spoke to her, what happened?
After we talked about it, I told them to come around to my house, to the front of my house, and then we got in my car and we drove towards her
You could
house.
speak up just a little.
I told her to come around to my house, and then we got in my car and then we drove down towards her place. But after she didn't tell me to go directly to her house, she told me to go to a street over and park. And after she got out the vehicle and she started heading to her house.
When she had asked you to dispose of the gun, did you know what the gun was, where she had got the gun?
No.
When Elizabeth exited the car, how long were you and Vera in the car before she returned?
I'd say about 10 minutes. I was getting a little impatient because she was taking a while to come back.
When Elizabeth returned, did you have any knowledge of what had just occurred?
No.
When you disposed of the gun, did you know what the gun had been used for?
No.
When did you find out about the gun being used to kill Major David Shannon?
After a couple of detectives, I can't remember which detectives came. I don't remember their names. After the detectives got me, they told me that the gun was used in a murder.
After that, did you have any other contact with Elizabeth Shannon?
No.
No further questions, Your Honor?
Okay.
Mr. Humphrey, when was the first time you met Elizabeth Shannon and Vera Thompson?
At my house.
Had you ever seen them before that night?
No, the only time is when I drove past them.
Okay. Isn't it true that you called over to Vera and Elizabeth from your backyard, like you were standing behind your fence and you were calling to them?
Yes.
Okay. So it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're standing in your backyard and you're yelling at 2 random girls to come and talk to you?
Yeah.
Okay. So were you like trying to hook up with them?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you finally got their attention, they came over to your fence, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Elizabeth asked you to do her a favor, right?
Correct.
Elizabeth asked you to get rid of a dirty gun, right?
Correct.
So you knew that the gun was dirty and had been used in a murder, yet you still agreed to get rid of it?
At the time, I did not know it was used for a murder, but
Well, she said it was dirty, so doesn't that mean that it...
I mean, it's just a dirty gun, so we can use for anything.
Okay, so a random girl that you had never met before, you were yelling at them, then they asked you to get rid of a gun, and you then proceeded to take them to their house, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Ask and answer.
You want to respond to that?
I was just trying to set the foundation.
Overrule.
Um,
Answer the question.
So after you agreed to get rid of the gun, you then drove Elizabeth and Vera to 611 Galloway Drive, correct?
She told me, I didn't drive directly to her house,
Well-
she told me to go to the street over.
Okay, exactly.
So do you know where?
To the street over.
So it was the street behind Galloway Drive, correct?
Correct.
However, excuse me, sorry. So a random girl you had never met before, correct?
Correct.
You're doing her dirty work for her, correct?
Correct.
And you're trying to hook up with her, correct?
Correct.
And you're getting her phone number, correct?
Correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Yes, sir, Your Honor. Now, in reference to the fact that you mentioned that the gun was dirty, did you understand what that meant?
At the time, no.
Did you know that the gun was used in a murder at that time?
No.
What were your attempts and goals of that night?
Just to hook up, quickly hook up at 2 in the morning, honestly.
So that was your only intention?
Correct.
No further questions, Your Honor?
Okay, thank you. Any recross?
How old were you the night in 2002?
Mid-20s.
And Elizabeth Shannon was how old?
I'm not sure.
15, 14?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance. He did not know Elizabeth Shannon at the time.
Overrule.
She was 14, 15 to your, I mean, could you tell how old she was at all?
She looked older, so.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
There you go.
Thanks, send them down. All right, next witness.
Your Honor, state cause Vera Thompson.
Who?
Vera Thompson.
Okay, come on up.
You promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. You may be seated.
Okay, proceed.
Please state your name for the record.
Vera Thompson.
Ms. Thompson, you have a very soft voice. If you'd speak a little louder, please.
Vera Thompson.
Can you tell us what do you do?
I'm a student.
And what school do you go to?
Brandon Street Alternative.
How do you know Elizabeth Shannon?
School.
Can you tell us how long the two of you have been friends?
I've known Elizabeth for about 1.5 years, and then we started becoming really good friends 2 or 3 months ago.
Can you tell us what type of person Elizabeth is?
She's very rebellious. She doesn't like rules. Thank you.
How often do you spend the night at Elizabeth's house?
It's back and forth every other night.
In the course of you spending the night at Elizabeth's house, do you know Joan Shannon?
I do.
Can you describe the relationship between Joan and Elizabeth?
It wasn't there. They really didn't have much of a relationship until Elizabeth tried to commit suicide, and then they started having a more mother-daughter relationship.
When you would spend the night, what was the condition of the house?
It was dirty, clothes everywhere, dishes everywhere, food left on the stove.
Would you say this was typical?
Yes.
What type of conversations did you have with Elizabeth?
Normally, like, when's the next party? When are we gonna drink again? When are we gonna smoke again? And then later on after the suicide, she was talked about her and the conversations she talked to me about the conversations her and her mother had about her stepfather.
What were these conversations about?
About them trying to kill her stepfather, and how they had tried to poison him with rat poisoning, but it didn't work because he had threw it up.
And can you restate when these conversations started to happen?
After the suicide, or after she attempted suicide.
On the night of July 23rd, can you tell us what happened?
Like she said, Elizabeth was at my house, and around like 9-ish, Joan came and picked us up, and we went back to her house, and we walked in, and we went up to her room, shut the door, and we were there, and then around 11, her mom came and knocked on the door and said that they were going to bed. And so after that happened, we snuck out through the sliding door, and we were walking down Yadkin, and that's when we met Dee and Derek, and Elizabeth walked up to him, and she started talking to him, I guess, about the getting rid of the gun or whatnot. And after that, she asked if he could do her a favor, and that's when he took us back to the road behind Elizabeth's house, Short Ridge Drive, pretty sure. And she told me to wait in the car with Derek so that Derek would not drive off. And we were sitting in the car for about 10 minutes, and then she came out, and she had a bag, and it was some sweatpants. And when I looked in it, there was no gun, maybe. But then we got out and went back into the house, and that's when I saw Elizabeth's mom, Joan. She was standing there. She was kind of calm, and she wasn't crying at all, and she looked up to the ceiling and said, I need something to cry about. And then she told us to go back to our rooms and pretend like we were sleeping. And I'm guessing after that, that's when she called the police.
Did you know what just had happened?
No, I did not.
Did you know what Elizabeth just did?
I did not.
So when you guys entered the house and Joan was calm, you had no clue of what had just occurred between Joan and Elizabeth in the house?
No.
Objection, Your Honor, leading the witness.
Sustained.
No further questions, Your Honor?
Doesn't mean you have to stop, but that's fine.
Ms. Thompson, isn't it true that on July 21st, 2002, Elizabeth showed you a dark-colored handgun?
This is correct.
And you and Elizabeth took your mother's car and went to an open field and test-fired the gun? And like you said earlier, on July 22nd, you would spend the night at the Shannon household.
Correct.
And isn't it true that Elizabeth kept asking you that if she had ever did something wrong and got herself arrested, that you should promise her that you wouldn't tell the police?
Yes.
And you told her that you wouldn't say anything, correct?
Correct.
So, like you said earlier, you snuck out and left 611 Galloway Drive. The morning of July 23rd, do you remember what time you left?
Maybe 2-ish, something like that.
And y'all left the house to go get rid of one of Elizabeth's boyfriend's guns, correct?
I'm not sure.
So you snuck out of the sliding glass door.
Correct.
Which is on the back of the house.
Mm-hmm.
But when you guys normally snuck out, you went out Elizabeth's bedroom window. Okay. Which faces Galloway Drive, correct?
I believe so.
So while you and Elizabeth were heading down Galloway Drive, did you ask her where you guys were going, like why y'all were sneaking out?
No.
Do you remember the statement that you made to Detective Murphy the day you were found in the trailer on Fork Road?
I do not.
Do you think maybe it would help you to see the statement?
It would.
Your Honor, may I proceed?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me see the second page.
And if you can just read to yourself from red line to red line, please. Okay, so thank you. And in that statement, doesn't it say that you and Elizabeth were walking past Tattoo World, which is at 5955 Yakin Road, when you ran into a black male subject near the intersection of Southwick and Yakin, yet the black male was yelling at you through his backyard fence at 410 Hallmark Road.
Mhm.
Is that, so was he at Tattoo World, or was he at the intersection, or was he in his backyard?
He was in his backyard.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if Tattoo World is located here, and this intersection of Southwick and Yakin is here, and his backyard is here, how can he be at all three places at one time?
I don't know.
So, the black male that was yelling at you guys through his fence, Elizabeth asked him to get rid of a gun, correct?
She asked him to do her a favor.
Sorry, did I mess it up? Sorry. Yes, correct. So then, like you said earlier, you guys got in the car with him, and he took you guys to Short Ridge Road.
Mm-hmm.
And you stayed in the car with him while Elizabeth went into the house.
Correct. Correct.
Did you guys talk at all while Elizabeth was in the house?
No, we just listen to music.
Okay. So when Elizabeth came back out to the car and handed Derek the bag and everything, and you and Elizabeth went back in the house, Joan Shannon was standing in the hall, correct?
Correct.
And when you asked Elizabeth what had happened, her response was, maybe one day I'll tell you, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Who is Donnie Coleman?
He's a friend.
And do you recall what exactly he told you?
He had told, we were at a couple weeks after the shooting had happened. We were.
Do you remember Donnie?
Okay, any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, you can come down. Call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state calls Elizabeth Shannon.
You promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may be seated.
Can you spell your name for the record?
Elizabeth Shannon,
Can you tell us what school you attend?
Ramsey Street Alternative.
Why weren't you attending a regular school?
I got kicked out for fighting.
Can you describe your relationship with your mother before she met Major Shannon?
Well, before she met Mother Shannon, I lived with my aunt in New York when I was 3 years old. So me and my mother didn't really have a relationship. It was just me, my aunt, and my sister.
Who is your aunt?
My aunt Louise,
How are you related to her?
she's my mom's sister.
After your mother married David, your stepfather, what was your relationship with her like?
It was pretty much the same. We didn't have like a typical mother and daughter relationship. We pretty much didn't talk, we didn't communicate, and her and my stepdad would always fight, so that would cause tension around us.
When did the fighting between your parents start?
When we moved to Minnesota from New York.
Do you have any other siblings besides your sister Daisy?
Yes, I have 2 younger brothers.
What was their relationship with your mother like?
It was a typical relationship. They had a very good relationship. She treated them a lot better than she treated me.
Did you and your family ever go on vacations?
They went on vacations.
When you say they, where were you?
I was at the house.
Who would watch you when you didn't go on these vacations?
No one.
How old were you at the time?
12.
Before your family moved to North Carolina, were you having disciplinary problems?
No.
What made you start acting out when you got to North Carolina?
I didn't really feel like I belonged at the house because I didn't really have a relationship with anybody besides my sister. And then when she got pregnant, me and her kind of drifted apart. So I didn't talk to any of my brothers. I didn't talk to my mom. I didn't talk to my stepfather. So I didn't really want to be there. So I started acting out.
Can you describe the condition of your home?
Very messy, dishes everywhere, clothes everywhere.
How often was the house cleaned?
Whenever my parents would throw parties, that's when the house would be clean. Other than that, it was never clean.
Did you have any idea or clue as to what type of parties your parents had?
I had an idea that they were swinging parties, but I never really said anything about it.
During these parties, where were you and your siblings?
My brothers were at a babysitter's house, and my sister and me, they told us to go to a friend's house.
How long would these parties last?
About throughout the weekend.
How often would your parents have these parties?
About every weekend.
Let's go back to when you got in trouble for disciplinary reasons. Can you tell us what type of restrictions were put on you?
My stepfather, he put deadbolts and locks my window, and they also put an alarm on my door, so when I would open it from the inside, they could hear it and it would wake them up.
When these restrictions fell, what was done about it?
Not much for my mom. She didn't really care. My stepfather would get angry, but it didn't really stop me from doing anything.
Let me ask you, after these parties your parents had, did they have regular company come over?
My mom did, yes.
How often would this company come over?
About 3 to 4 times a week.
Did you know who her company was?
Yes. His name was Jeffrey Wilson.
Where was your dad when he would come around?
At work.
Can you tell the court about an incident that took place around Mother's Day in 2002?
Well, my two brothers had a babysitter's house, and the babysitter was my friend at the time. And my sister, she had came up with her son, and she knocked on the door, and she knew I wasn't supposed to be there. So she went to my mom. My mom came, and she got angry. She started yelling at me, and she started hitting me. And at first, I didn't hit her back, and then it turned into a fight. And I told her I didn't want to come home, and she had told me good because we didn't want you there anyways. So after that, she was like, no, you have to come home. So we went home got in the car, and got into the neighborhood. I told her that I had these pills in my room and I was gonna take them and kill myself. She didn't do anything about that at the time. And then when I got into my room, she took me to the hospital.
How long were you in the hospital?
Just for the day.
After that incident, what type of relationship did you and your mom have?
It got better, back to like a typical mother-daughter relationship. Whenever I would leave the house and not come back at a certain time, she would kind of let it slide and just tell me not to do it again. And she started asking me to go places more with her, and she started talking about her and my stepdad's fighting and all that stuff.
Did things start to feel normal between the two of you?
Yeah, somewhat.
What kind of conversations did the both of you have?
She would just talk about her and my stepdad's fighting and how she didn't want him here and how she wishes that he would leave and just go and how she didn't want to be with him anymore.
What happened on the night of July 23rd, 2002?
At around 9 p.m., me and my mom had went to go pick up Bear from her house. We came back and we had went to my room, and we started listening to music. Then around 11 o'clock, my mom had told me that her and my stepdad were going to sleep. So after that, around like 2, me and Vera had snuck out the sliding door, and we had walked down Yakin Road, I believe. And then when we saw Derek Murphy, he was hollering at us, and so I went over to them and asked him if he could get rid of a gun for me, and he said he could. Then after that, he drove us to the road behind my house, so my parents couldn't see the lights in the driveway. I had went in there, did what I had to do. Then my mom had to wake up. She told me to get rid of all the evidence, so I did. I put all the evidence in a bag. I had a sweatshirt and sweatpants on and the gun, and then I put it on the seat of his car. And then me and Vera had came back, and she had told us to act like we were asleep, and that's when, after that, I believe she called 911.
Can you tell us what state of mind your mom was in when you and Vera had entered the house?
Objection, Your Honor. She has no personal knowledge of that. She has no knowledge of what Joan Shannon was thinking at the time.
Want to respond to that?
Your Honor, she was simply reflecting what she saw in her mother at the time of the conversation and the incident.
I asked that the question reflect that premise, Your Honor, and not go or not seem like it's asking what Joan was thinking.
Restate the question.
From your perspective, when you entered the house, how did your mother seem to you?
Objections overruled. You may answer the question.
She seemed calm. She had told me before that she needed to find something to cry about. She didn't seem very panicky or anything. She just seemed very collected.
So do you remember signing a testimony to Detective Murphy and Kimball?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recognize this statement?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. Okay, don't whisper to your witness.
Your Honor, my reposition.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you recognize these statements?
Okay, you need to speak loud enough so that we all hear what you're saying to the witness.
Do you recognize these statements?
Yes.
And is this your signature?
Yes.
Your Honor, state would like to publish it to the jury.
You want to offer it into evidence?
Yes, Your Honor.
What is this exactly?
It was her statement of the incident that happened in 2002 of April about a conversation between her and her mother about killing her father.
I don't think there's enough foundation, Your Honor.
Well, I don't need it, but we're running out of time, so we'll let her introduce it anyway.
Thank you.
You want this read to the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, who do you want to read it?
Elizabeth.
Okay. You got time for that? Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the witness is now going to read a statement that was purportedly given by her. This statement was not given under oath, so if it conflicts with her testimony here at trial, you're to take that into consideration. All right, you may read the statement. Okay, you can't whisper to your witness.
Sometime in April of 2002, my mother, Joan
Why
Shannon.
don't you have a seat while she's reading?
My mother, Joan Shannon, approached me and stated that she has been trying to find someone to kill her husband, David Shannon. After our initial conversation, I was approached several times by my mother asking me to kill my dad, David Shannon. Mom says she could not find anyone to murder Dad and would it be easy to do. Joan Shannon told me that I could get away with murder if I would just shoot my father late at night. I took our conversation to mean I should shoot my father while he was sleeping. My mother wanted my father dead for some time, since April of 2002, and I was tired of her asking me to kill him. So when Mom, Joan Shannon, asked me on July 22nd, 2002, if I was going to kill Dad tonight, I told her I wasn't sure if I could go through the murder.
Wait, I'm going to approach the witness. Would you hand it back to you?
Well, you. You've introduced the Exhibit 10. She read the first paragraph and she stopped. There's another big paragraph and there's some question and answers. I mean, if you don't want it read, that's fine, but if y'all want it read into record, under the doctrine of completeness, I'll have it read.
I would like that read aloud, sir.
Okay. Pick up where you left off, read the whole statement, including the questions and the answers. And let us know who's doing the questioning and who's giving the answers.
On July 22nd, 2002, at approximately 9 p.m., my mother and I picked up Vera Thompson at her home. She was going to spend the night at my house. When we had arrived at my residence, Vera Thompson and I went out and walked through the neighborhood. We arrived home just before 11 p.m. My mother told me that she and David were going to bed. After Mother was asleep, Vera and I quietly left 611 Galloway Drive out the rear sliding glass door. While we were walking on Yakin Road, I ran into a black male by the nickname of D. While Vera and I was speaking/chatting with D, I asked him if he could get rid of a handgun for me. When D stated that he would be willing to get rid of a handgun for me, D, Vera, and I got into D's vehicle, and I gave D directions to Short Ridge Road. I got out of the vehicle and cut through the neighbor's backyard and entered my house through the rear sliding glass door. I immediately walked into my bedroom and I placed on a pair of surgical gloves on that was given to me by my mother, and I grabbed the handgun that she had given me several days earlier. I walked into my parents' bedroom and stood over my father and placed the handgun against his head and fired it. My mother, Joan Shannon, who was lying in bed beside my father, immediately jumped up and grabbed the telephone. When my father, David Shannon, started having a hard time breathing, gasping for air, I placed the gun to his chest and shot him in the chest. When I shot my father, my mother immediately looked at me. After shooting my father, I immediately left my home and cut through the backyard behind my house and contacted Dee and Bear, who were waiting on Short Ridge Road. I gave Dee the murder weapon and his surgical gloves I was wearing in a white bag. After I gave Dee the murder weapon and gloves, Bear and I walked back to 611 Galloway Drive. When we walked into the residence, my brother was standing in the hallway. Bear and I immediately walked into the bedroom and acted as if we were sleeping. When the police arrived, several days later after the murder, I was approached by my mother, and she told me not to discuss the murder with anyone. The statement that I made to Detective Murphy and Sergeant Kimball is true and accurate to the best of my knowledge. All right, question and answers. Question, why did you kill your father?
Who's asking the questions?
What does it say?
Detective Murphy, Your Honor.
And I answered, because I was tired of my mother asking me to kill him and if I was going to do it tonight. He asked me, did you ever fire the murder weapon before July 23rd, 2002? I answered yes. Bear and I fired the gun several days before the murder in some open field. He asked, did your mother ever promise you anything for killing your father? I answered no. I knew he had insurance, but she never promised me anything. He asked, did you ever have any problems firing the murder weapon? I answered, yes, the weapon had to be cocked before it could be fired each time. He asked, did you have to cock the weapon that night before firing the first and second round? I answered yes, I had to cock it before I fired the first shot, and I cock it before I fire the second shot to the chest. He asked me, who gave you the handgun? I answered, my mother, Joan Shannon, several days before the murder. He asked me, have you or your mother ever tried to poison your father before? I answered, my mother put something in my father's food before, but I did not know what type of poison it was. He asked, what happened to your father after he ate the food? I answered, he got sick and vomited. He asked, did your father ever go to the hospital? I answered, no. He asked, do you know where your mother attempted to poison David Shannon? I said, no, I just knew it several months ago. He asked, did your mother know that you were the one who shot your father on July 23rd, 2002? I answered, yes. Joan Shannon saw me shoot him, and she asked me if I was going to kill him that night. That's it.
Okay, any more questions?
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Shannon, that wasn't the first statement you gave to detectives regarding your father's murder, is it?
No.
No, you have actually given 3, including that statement, correct?
Yes.
And in each of those statements, you told the respective detective that it was a true statement, right?
Yes.
And so, on the third statement, you're saying you told the truth, right?
Yes.
The first statement, you lied, isn't that correct?
No.
But you didn't tell them the whole truth, did you?
I didn't tell him the whole truth, but I didn't lie.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that answer?
I didn't tell him the exact truth, but I also didn't lie either.
So you withheld parts of the truth during
Correct.
your first statement, right?
Correct.
And you withheld parts of the truth during your second statement, correct?
Correct.
But you're asking us to believe you now, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to take you back to May 12th of 2002. You just told your attorney that you entered into an altercation with your mother on this day, isn't that correct?
Yes.
And on that day, the altercation took place at the babysitter's home, right?
Yes.
And you testified that you hit Joan during that altercation, correct?
I said she hit me first, and that's when I started hitting her. Yes.
So the answer was yes, you did hit her, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, May 12th was Mother's Day, right?
Correct.
So you hit your mom on Mother's Day?
Yes.
Okay. So isn't it true that you never really had a relationship with your mother until May 12th, 2002?
After that, that's when we started to have a relationship.
Right, so up until May 12th, you had no relationship with your mom?
Correct.
Okay. So you and your mom never really talked about much up until May 12th, 2002, right?
Right.
You never had a relationship with her?
Right.
So your mom never bought you clothes?
She did, but that doesn't mean we had a relationship.
So she never bought you food, took you places?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
What's the relevance of this?
Your Honor, I'm trying to establish that they did have a relationship. I'm trying to outline all the different things that Joan did to have a relationship with her daughter.
All right, Overruled.
Thank you. So your mom never provided you a bed to sleep in?
Yeah, she did.
Never provided a roof over your head?
She did.
Never bought you Christmas presents?
She did.
She did. And she gave you medical care should you ever need it, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, she did provide vacation opportunities and family trips that you could go on, correct?
Correct.
And isn't it true that you attended your parents' wedding in North Dakota?
Yes.
Isn't it true that you went to Wisconsin on vacation with your family?
Yes.
Isn't it true that your parents took you to see Mount Rushmore?
Yes.
Isn't it true that they took you to North Dakota to attend a funeral?
Yes.
Isn't it true that you attended Busch Gardens with them in 1993?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you testified that you never went on any trips with your family, but clearly you did, right?
Right.
Okay, so it was your choice to stay home on the Myrtle Beach trip, right?
Right.
And that you were invited on that trip?
Right.
Objection, Your Honor, badgering the witness.
Overrule is that.
Now, your parents took you to school every day, right?
Yes.
Until you got expelled for fighting, right?
Right.
So after you were expelled from fighting, they moved you to Ramsey Street Alternative School, correct?
Yes.
And while there, isn't it true you joined a gang?
No.
Your Honor, may I first the witness?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Your Honor, just for the record, these are defense exhibits 1 through 5.
1 through 5.
Yes, sir. I'm just gonna do them two at a time, if that's okay. Okay. So just focusing on these two documents right now, do you recognize these two documents?
Yes.
Okay, and they were done by you, correct?
Me and my friends while
You and
we
your
were in
friends.
jail, yes.
Thank you. Could you please could you please identify this document?
Yeah. It was colorings from when we were in jail.
And what is on this coloring?
What do y'all want to object? I
Objection,
think
Your
Taylor
Honor.
wants somebody to object.
Yes, sir. Objection, he hasn't established a foundation yet.
Well, that's true too, but are you going to introduce them?
Yes, sir.
All right, you understand there's consequences to you introducing evidence at this point?
Your Honor, I think he means he's going to introduce them when they do
Right.
their witness.
Okay, so you just want her to identify them?
Yes, sir. I'm not
All right, that's
introducing any
fine.
evidence at
That's
this
fine.
time.
You can have her identify them. Don't show them to the jury.
Right.
Don't have her tell us what they are, except in general terms.
Okay. So in general terms, this is a drawing done by you, correct?
Correct.
And in general terms, it says Elizabeth Shannon at the bottom, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. And in general terms, it says dead slobs at the bottom of this, right?
Right.
Thank you. Moving on to these two documents. In general terms, this says Elizabeth Shannon at the bottom, correct?
Yes.
And in general terms, this says and gathered weed, right?
Right.
Objection, Your Honor, these are not general terms.
That's true, but let's move on.
So, now, in general terms, these are all gang affiliated, correct?
They can be.
They can be or they are?
They can be.
They can be. So you did not intend for these to be parts of a gang?
No.
No, but they're just riddled with getting things out of happenstance. No.
Just ask her a question.
In this particular document, isn't it true that you colored this?
Yes.
And isn't it true that you edited the caption along the bottom?
Yes.
Please read that silently to yourself. Did you read it? Could you please rephrase what that said?
Aloud.
Aloud.
The crit makes.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustain.
Okay, moving on. You snuck out regularly, correct?
Correct.
And your father attempted to curb that behavior, right?
Right.
So he put bars on your window
Yeah, he put locks and deadbolts, yes.
and an alarm system, right?
Yes.
And you broke that alarm system, so you continued to sneak out, correct?
Yes.
Now, I'm moving forward now to July of 2002, specifically the night before you shot your stepfather. Isn't it true that you and Vera snuck out to test fire a gun?
Yes.
Isn't it true that you stole Vera's mother's car in order to do so?
Yes.
And throughout the course of that night, isn't it true you were pulled over by a police officer?
I don't recall.
You do not recall that?
Right.
Would it help if you saw a statement?
Yes.
Well, Ms. Monaghan's telling me we're running low on time, so we'll bypass that now. Isn't it true that you had multiple opportunities to get out of shooting your father?
Yes.
Now, back to the night of July 22nd, 2002, you went into your father's bedroom, right? With a gun you had obtained, correct?
It was already loaded when I got it.
So you didn't reload it after you test fired it?
No.
So it had no bullets in it, but you somehow managed to shoot it?
Okay, hold on. I did reload it after I
You did
test fired.
reload it, thank you. And that night you shot your father in the head, right?
Yes.
You saw that he was still alive, right?
Right.
You heard him gasping for air.
Right.
So you shot him again in the chest, right?
Yes.
And at that point you were satisfied he was dead, correct?
I guess.
And at that point you went and hid the gun, right?
I gave it to Dee to hide the gun.
Yes, and then you came back inside and pretended to be asleep, correct?
Yes.
And then when Mike Murphy came and interviewed you, you told him that you had no knowledge of what happened, right?
Right.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, ma'am. You come down. Doing all right on time? Okay, you got any more witnesses?
Yes, sir, Your Honor. So we'd like to call Anthony Jones.
You promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please state your name for court.
Anthony Jones.
Mr. Jones, what's your current occupation?
I do landscaping, both residential and commercial.
How did you meet Miss Elizabeth?
Through her friend Vera Thompson.
Did Miss Elizabeth ever contact you?
Yes, she did. She actually called me and requested me to come talk to her in further detail in person.
When did she ask you to meet her?
She asked me to meet her at her house.
No, when she asked, why did she ask to meet you in person exactly?
The phone conversation was really vague, and she wanted me to meet her in person to talk in further detail about some things that she couldn't discuss over the phone.
Where did you guys meet at?
We met at her house in the backyard.
Okay. What was the conversation about?
It started off talking about nothing, just shooting the breeze, and then it ended up taking a turn and talking about killing her stepfather, her father.
Why would she ask you to kill her stepfather?
She described how their home life was and how he treated them and the fact that he was trying to make them move.
What incentive did you have to killing your stepfather?
She offered me about $3,000 to $5,000 to do the job.
Did you believe that a young teen at the time could possess that amount of money?
Not at all, but at the same time, I wanted to find out where this was coming from, and so I listened to what she was telling me.
And after she explained everything, how did you respond to her offer?
I kind of just ignored it a bit. I told her that I could not do it because I had no actual reason to. I couldn't just come out and kill someone for no reason.
What else did you say in the conversation?
Can you restate the question?
What else did Elizabeth say in your conversation that day?
She wanted to know if I couldn't do it, if I could find someone else to do it.
How did you respond to that?
I had someone in mind to redirect the pressure from myself. So I left her with a name and a contact information of a friend of mine.
Did Miss Elizabeth ever state to you that day whether or not it was the first time she'd ever tried to kill her father?
She said that they had tried to kill her stepfather before by poisoning his food.
And did you say that you said the word they. Who exactly do you mean by they?
She said her mother had tried to poison her father before.
Did she say in that conversation why it was this time Elizabeth was trying to kill her father instead of her mother?
Just that the first time was unsuccessful.
Why was her mother not a part of this?
She wanted to stay in the background of things.
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
That's sustained.
Thank you.
No problem. Did she give you any suggestion where the money was going to come from?
Yes, she actually told me about excuse me. She told me about a $300,000 income that was going to come after his death.
What kind of income was that?
It was insurance from his death.
Okay. Following that day, did she ever contact you again?
Yes, she did follow up with me and talk in further detail about what we had already talked. And
What did she request when she contacted you?
she requested me to. Well, she told me about Donald and how her conversation with him went, and she requested me to get her a weapon.
Were you able to get her this weapon?
No, I wasn't able to get her this weapon.
Following this, did you ever go back over to the house?
Yeah, she invited me back over again.
Was this before or after David Shannon's death?
This is before, about 4 or 5 days prior.
Who all was at the home that day?
Everyone was home. All her family was there, and including her best friend.
And what did she want to meet? So you said everyone was home that day. Did you meet the defendant?
Yes, I did. He actually greeted me.
He greeted you.
Oh,
You mean
the victim greeted me.
What did Ms. Elizabeth invite you over to ask you that day?
She asked me if she followed up with me to see if I had found the murder weapon. I mean, a gun for them to use to commit the murder.
What'd you say?
No, I didn't. I kind of brushed off the question as I usually do.
And you said you met the defendant that day. What was going on at the time that you met the defendant?
It seemed to me that they were in a rush, that they were about to go somewhere. So it wasn't really, it was kind of in passing. I could tell that she was in a rush and she was hurrying.
Did Elizabeth tell you where they were going to that day?
She stated that her mother had a date.
Okay. Following the end of your conversation, what happened?
They offered to give me a ride to come along with them so they could drop me off back at my residence, and I agreed to come along with them.
Who offered to give you a ride?
The defendant.
The defendant being?
John Shannon.
John Shannon. Who all was in the car?
It was Joan driving, Elizabeth in the passenger seat. I was sitting behind Elizabeth, and her best friend was next to me.
Now, did you get dropped off first that day?
No, they actually dropped off Sierra, her best friend, because she stayed just a few houses down.
After she got out of the car, what happened?
Elizabeth started asking me openly about the murder and how things were going to be done. She started talking to me directly.
Did the defendant ever come to the conversation that day?
Yes, she actually started to give me like an overall overview of how things were going to go down, and she stated that Elizabeth was actually going to be the one to commit the murder.
Did she say anything else about it?
They asked me if I would get rid of the murder weapon and clothes for them into the river.
Did they offer you anything in return for this?
Yeah, they offered to pay me to do this act.
Well, how'd you respond to that?
The same way I had done earlier. I kind of brushed it off and didn't give an answer to this.
But this was direct questions and offers from the defendant, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
No further questions, Your Honor?
Mr. Jones, you were contacted by Elizabeth Shannon in April of 2002, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were 27 years old at the time?
Yes.
And she was what, 15?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in July of 2002, you went over to her home, is that correct?
Yeah, it is.
And Elizabeth's parents were not home, were they?
No, they weren't.
And that was the particular day where you had the conversation about murdering David, correct?
Yeah.
And Joan was not home at that time?
No, she wasn't.
Thank you. Now, Joan Shannon never asked you to shoot her husband, isn't that correct?
She asked me if I would commit the murder.
Joan Shannon asked
Oh,
you?
no, Joan did not. Elizabeth asked me.
So Joan Shannon never offered you, Joan Shannon never asked you to murder David, right?
Not on the first time we spoke.
So, Mr. Jones, you testified, I'm sorry, can't talk. Mr. Jones, you were arrested in 2005 on 13 counts of statutory rape of a minor, isn't that correct?
I understand I have my own issues.
I'm sorry?
I understand I have my own issues outside of this case.
So, your issue is being arrested on 13 counts of rape of a minor, right?
I understand, but we're here for murder.
I'm asking you a simple question.
You're correct.
I am correct.
You're correct.
Yeah, that rape occurred in 2003, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Yes? And isn't it true that the person you raped was 13 years old?
Yes, that's true.
That's true, and she became pregnant as a result of that.
Objection, Your Honor, relevance?
I don't see any.
I'm trying to.
Objection sustained. Any further,
Yes, sir.
the motions or anything? That's fine.
Sorry, I'm making.
Let's move on to something else.
Move on to something else. As it relates to this trial, isn't it true that you have negotiated a plea deal to only receive probation for your charges depending on your cooperation here today?
Yeah.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, we do not, Your Honor.
Okay, thanks, Jim, from that.
Yeah, I have a question on this right now.
Sure.
Another word, please.
I have to be very careful because I'm going to be graded by a former member of our Supreme Court, Justice Ed Brady, who's with us.
And I want to thank Justice Ed Brady because what people don't know is he's also helped the program at Methodist University. He was up on the North Carolina Supreme Court, and because of that, one of my classes was able to come up while he was on the bench and hear argument. So I want to thank you for
Come on back.
sneaking in.
Come on back.
But thank you.
All right, call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state would like to call Jeffrey Wilson to the stand.
You promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
You make this decision.
For the jury's benefit, is this your last witness?
Yes, sir.
All right, we're going to be taking a break in just a couple of minutes.
Please state your name for the court.
Jeffrey Wilson,
Where's your current residence, Mr. Wilson?
Germany,
What's your current occupation?
Army.
Prior to
I'm
being,
sorry, Your Honor, can the witness and you guys talk, we cannot hear you.
I apologize. The previous question was, what is your current occupation?
Army,
And prior to being stationed, moving to Germany, where did you live prior to that?
Fort Bragg,
Located here in Fayetteville, North Carolina?
correct.
While you lived in North Carolina, did you own a computer?
I own several computers.
What type of things did you do with this computer?
Online shopping, online chatting.
Now, you said chatting. What exactly does chatting mean?
Chatting, meeting people around online and talking, general conversations with them.
What was your general purpose of doing this?
Just to see who was around and just to get to know new people.
So did you frequent these chat rooms then?
Yes.
Now, I'm not the most familiar with these kind of chat rooms. I'm sure some of those here in the court aren't either. When you're in these kind of chat rooms, did you repercussions of that at all?
No, he was actually taking pictures.
Now, can you tell me about, following that night, did you guys ever meet again at another one of these kind of parties?
Well, they invited me to the Tony Bennett's party, where, like I said before, there was still sexual activities going on.
And in this kind of place, was it at the same hotel or was it at a private residence?
It was at a private residence.
Now, following your attendance to this party, did they continue to contact you? Did they enjoy your company?
Joanne did.
Joanne did?
Yes.
What did Joanne contact you about?
That she was really interested in me and she wanted to have one-on-one, discreet relationship.
Objection, Your Honor. I would like to know who Joanne is.
Joan Shannon.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Now, was her husband David Shannon to attend these events also?
No.
Did Joan Shannon ever mention to you whether or not this was normal for them?
It wasn't.
It wasn't at all? She didn't have any other boyfriends or anything like that?
Well, not that I know of.
Now, did Joan ever explain to you if there was any rules involving her marriage and how she acted around you?
The only thing she told me was that she couldn't have a one-on-one, discreet relationship with anybody.
So it was okay as long as everything remained open?
Exactly.
Now, to clarify the timeline, you said that she first contacted you about this following Tony Bennett's party. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the first meeting occurred in January? Is that
Correct.
correct?
Correct.
And about how long after was the second meeting?
It was around March timeframe.
March timeframe? Was the
Yes.
second meeting or was that Tony Bennett's meeting?
Tony Bennett.
But there was an occurrence in between?
Yes.
So is it safe to say that these events occurred about, how often would you say, once a month?
Once a month.
Now, following her contact to you, how often did you guys start meeting?
4 to 5 times a day, a week.
So you guys met quite often?
Yes.
That was 4 to 5 times a week?
Yes.
To clarify. After you started seeing Joan in these kinds of manners, what kind of things did you guys do?
We went shopping, we went out to dinner. Basically, I would say a relationship type of thing.
Relationship type of thing?
Yes.
Did you ever get the chance to meet her family?
I met Elizabeth.
Did you only meet Elizabeth?
And Daisy.
And Daisy?
Yes.
So Joan brought her family around you?
Yes, we all went out. Like I said before, we went out to eat, we went out shopping.
Did you guys ever shop for anything in particular?
Well, at the time I was interested in a motorcycle, so we did end up at a motorcycle dealership.
Now, during this time frame from March to roughly July, when the incident occurred, how many times did you say that you two were sexually active?
Every day, I guess, I would say.
So you guys did incur in sexual back and forth
Yes.
every day?
Yes.
Now, if you guys are meeting this often, did your wife know about this kind of stuff?
She does now.
Okay. So, during this time frame, you said that you guys were meeting a lot, and you said that you guys were having sex very often, or you were not having sex very often?
We were having sex often, not as much though.
By how much would you say in this time frame?
About 1 to 2.
What's that? The amount of time you were investing in Joan Shannon, that wasn't a lot of sex that you were receiving back for being involved in a swinger relationship.
No, not at
How
all.
did you benefit exactly from this?
Well, she did buy everything that I wanted.
So she paid for your entire relationship, essentially?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. Leading the witness.
Overruled.
Did she make any offers to you?
She was willing to co-sign on a motorcycle.
So that in the end, that's what your main goal was?
Yes.
Now, going toward the end of April, how would you say that your relationship advanced?
It got serious because she told me she loved me, and she wanted to be only with me because I made her happy.
Did she tell you anything about her relationship with her husband at this point?
The only thing she really told me was she wasn't as happy.
Did you ask her why her and her husband were still together then?
The reason she was still together, was still with him, was because of financial.
Is that all she mentioned to you at this time?
Yes.
Do you happen to recall a specific conversation you had with Joan in regards to the date of July 18th? Sorry. Yeah, July 18th, 2002? I'm sorry, let me correct myself in court. January 18th, 2002?
January 18th. I don't recall.
Okay. It's fine. On that date, to refresh your memory, did you guys ever talk about the relationship that they had?
No, we really didn't talk about their relationship. She really talked about our relationship.
Now, you guys continued to talk and have time with each other. Did anything ever occur that prevented this or caused it to end?
No.
Now, moving on, do you happen to recall a conversation from July 18th, 2002?
She told me she was irate with the relationship she was having with David, and she really wanted to get out of the relationship.
And what caused this feelings? Did she express those to you? What caused this?
No.
Now, is there anything that ever stopped you guys' relationship?
Well, he was getting suspicious of our relationship.
No, you say he was getting suspicious.
Yes.
How did that affect your relationship?
She just built a stronger bond to me, I guess, because of the happiness she had with me.
Did David ever intervene into your relationship?
No.
So David never told you that you guys had to stop seeing each other?
Well, I contacted him one day and asked him what was going on between him and Joan.
And what did he tell you?
That I had to stop talking to her.
And you know about the time frame this was?
This was around July.
So this was around July. Do you happen to know if it was toward early July, mid to late July?
It was late July.
It was toward late July?
Yes.
So it was around the time frame of the incident?
Yes.
Now, what exactly did you ask David Shannon?
If I can still see Joan.
And you said that was around mid-July?
Yes.
And he told you?
I couldn't see her anymore.
That was around the same time frame that she became irate with the relationship?
Correct.
Did she ever tell you anything else that you wanted to do around that time frame?
She wanted me to leave my wife and leave everything behind and move with her.
So now it's safe to say, Mr. Wilson, that Joan's emotions were increasing as it led up to mid to late July. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now to clarify for the courtroom, the emotions in this time frame, January to February, she admitted to you that she was into you and attracted to you. Is this correct?
Correct.
And from March to April, she said that she really wanted to be with you and that she started to fall in love with you. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then from June to July, she became much more into you, much more in love with you, and was trying to persuade you into leaving your wife and being with her. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then toward mid-July is when everything fell apart. Is that correct?
Correct.
Objection, Your Honor, leading the witness.
The same. Anything else?
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
Cross.
Mr. Wilson, you're married, right?
Yes.
Did you get married in front of a preacher?
Yes.
So it was a minister of the Word of God.
Yes.
And did you make vows?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Overruled.
And did you make vows to your wife?
Yes.
And was one of those vows to love and cherish and protect her?
Yes.
Was one of those vows was to only to keep unto her?
Correct.
And did you mean those vows when you took them?
I did.
Were they sacred to you?
They were.
Okay, now, you said David Shannon is the one who introduced you to swinging lifestyle, right?
Correct.
Did you ever tell Joan Shannon that when you lived in Texas prior to Fayetteville that you were a swinger as well?
I didn't.
So you did tell her she was beautiful, right?
Correct.
And was that just something to get something from her, right?
Correct.
And it was a lie.
It was.
And you told her you loved her, right?
I did.
And you lied to her there.
Yes.
And so basically you told her all kinds of sweet nothings, right?
Correct.
And they were said to get what you wanted, basically, right?
Indeed.
A motorcycle, right?
Indeed.
Okay. So all these lies while you were living with your wife, correct?
Correct.
Right. So you had basically one life going with Joan, right? and another life with your wife and kids.
Correct.
So basically you were living a lie, correct?
I was.
And Jeffrey, are you aware of the Uniform Code of Military Justice?
Yes,
And did you violate this code of justice?
I did.
So when you took up with the Shannons, you were aware that it was against the Uniform Code of Military Justice to have sex outside of marriage?
Correct.
And is it correct that you knew you could face prison,
Correct.
even demotion,
Yes,
but you did it anyway?
indeed.
So now during this secret life that you have, your wife knew nothing about your internet activities, correct?
Correct.
And you said you went by a screen name, correct?
Yes.
And more than one?
I had multiple, but my most popular was Black Stuntman.
And can you explain to us why you chose that name?
The reason I chose it, one, because I'm black. And when an actor is filming, doing an action scene, they have to use a stuntman, so I went with stuntman.
And could you explain to us how you both loved your wife and did this swinging kind of lifestyle?
I would just say it was something I wanted.
Something you wanted?
Yes,
Did you want a marriage?
I did.
But you wanted to also have a swinging lifestyle as well.
Correct.
So you wanted to be involved with more than one woman.
Correct.
So why did you get married?
Because I fell in love with my wife.
But you aren't in love with Joan, correct?
No.
And while you were dating and courting your wife, you were seeing other women as well?
No, just Joan.
And can you describe your marriage to me?
It was I would say a healthy relationship. Even though I saw my wife and kids on the weekend, saw Joan during the weekday.
So it's to my understanding that your wife had no knowledge of the gangbang situation up until this trial, correct?
Correct.
So you've lied to Joan, correct?
Correct.
You've lied to your wife, correct?
Correct.
And you've lied to the military, your job, correct?
Well, they didn't know
But,
at the time.
But you've broke the military justice code.
Correct.
So it's to my understanding you've been living two separate lives, correct?
Correct.
So, but you chose to do this lifestyle, correct?
Yes.
And you knew that it was against the law to do what you were doing, correct?
Yes.
But you wouldn't let the law stand between you and your goal of getting this motorcycle that Joan promised you, correct?
Correct.
Now, it's to my understanding that you made vows in front of this court to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, correct?
Correct.
Did you mean those vows?
I did.
And how does this court know that you discard this?
Assuming the evidence.
Overrule.
So it's to my understanding that this court heard your vows, correct?
Correct.
So how does this court know that you discard this truth like it was a piece of trash? Like the truth that you told Joan, the truth that you told the military and David, all these lies.
Objection, badgering wins.
Overrule.
No
Answer.
Judge.
Oh, well, with the vows that I committed with my wife, that was one thing. But this is something totally different. My life, my job, and my family is actually on the line.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just keep your seat right there. How long can we take?
5-minute recess and then the defense is on. They've only got 3 witnesses.
Okay. I'm going to overrule her. There's nothing anybody can do, including lawyers, in 5 minutes. We're going to take a 10-minute recess.
Bailiffs, if you will take our jury to
Did they
the
go,
jury room,
Judge?
please. And there's a bathroom back there.
All right, let the record reflect the jury's back. What says these defendants?
Your Honor, defense lies Paul pretty strong.
Okay, come on up. Get the record out. Know what to do.
so there was 6 of us. There was my mom, my dad, my 2 sisters, me, and my brother.
And can you tell us about your brother growing up?
David was pretty shy and he didn't really date much and he kept to himself. He wasn't into sports. He always talked about wanting to join the military and overall he was just kept to himself.
And were you and your brother close?
Yes, we would talk a lot on the phone and he confided a lot in me and he would like to come and visit a lot.
And do you remember when your brother enlisted in the military?
I would say it was around when he turned 18.
And did he seem happy being in the military?
Yes, very. It was always his dream job. So when he was stationed in New York, it was the happiest I've ever seen him. And he met Joan up there, so he finally had his dream job and dream girl.
And did you like David and Joan together as a couple?
Yes. She made my brother very happy, and she was just such a sweet and caring and nurturing soul. And they just complimented each other so well.
And did your family accept Joan?
Yes, my mother considered her like another daughter, and I have a sister.
And so there was no disappointment when David and Joan decided to get married?
No, not at all. We were really happy.
And so describe for me David and Joan's relationship after they got married.
David and Joan were happy, and he was really excited and loved her kids a lot, and he was excited to adopt them. And overall, to me, they were just the perfect couple.
All right, now let me take you back to the time you received a phone call about your brother's death. Can you describe that for me?
Yes, a detective had called and told me that David had been shot and murdered, and I was just devastated. And I couldn't think anything else other than I knew he was Special Forces and maybe it had to be a hit.
And did David ever discuss anything work related with you?
Not really. He would just mention how his days went, and I knew he worked with computers, but that's about it.
Okay, now, can you describe to me David's relationship to his kids?
David was tough, and he was the punisher. The boys never really gave David and Joan much trouble because they were young and they were just little boys. They like to do little boy things. But it was sad to see that there was kind of this barrier between the boys and the girls because David, moreover, had to ground them because they were trouble, especially Elizabeth. He tried several ways to stop her behavior by putting locks and alarms on her door and windows and things like that, but nothing stopped her. And overall, they just didn't have the tools to handle her. So there was nothing they could do. It's not like they could chain her, so.
Now, you said Daisy and Elizabeth were always trouble. Can you describe that to me?
Yes, Daisy kind of grew out of the whole rebellious stage when she had her baby, but Elizabeth just took things way further. She's just really manipulative and a compulsive liar, and I say this because whenever she was in trouble, she always had to share the blame. And even when we ourselves caught her red-handed, so it just made me and my mother not trust her at all.
So you say you didn't trust Elizabeth. Is that because she was violent?
Yes, she scared David and Joan a lot. I was nervous for her to be around my family, and after everything, I just thought she was capable of anything.
Capable of murder?
Yes.
No further question, Your Honor.
Your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. How old did you say you knew your brother?
Can you please say that again?
How well would you say that you knew your brother?
We were pretty close, and he confided a lot of things in me.
So how often did you talk to your brother?
Once or twice every 2 weeks.
Twice. So what kind of things did he confide in you?
He would tell me about how his days went and the kids and how Elizabeth, he wanted the best, but how he was struggling to find a way to help her and put her on the right track.
And you stated that you were supportive of the relationship between your brother and Joan?
Yes.
So you were well aware they were swingers?
Not at the time.
Not at the time? But it had been occurring for quite some time and you were very close to your brother, is that correct?
Yes.
But not close enough that he would confine his actions in his marriage?
I didn't think that was important, other than the fact that I knew that they loved each other. That wasn't my business to pry into their sexual life.
So you didn't confine everything in you?
No, just the general things a brother and sister would talk about.
How old were Joan and Daisy's kids how old was Daisy and Elizabeth when you first met them?
I want to say 4 or 5.
4 or 5, and you described that you always kind of felt as though that they were trouble.
Yeah, as they got closer to their teenage, that's when I started seeing.
How often did you see them in that time frame?
Normally they come for like any other family for holidays and things like that, whenever they had the chance to come and visit.
But Elizabeth didn't go on a lot of vacations with her family.
Yeah.
But you still felt as though you knew her?
From what the little bit I may have seen and from what I was told, that's how I feel.
So you're the only person who saw a little bit of her actions.
I guess you can say that.
When you first met Joan, who were their daughters staying with?
Her sister.
Her sister. So as they lived longer with Joan and your brother-in-law, you'd say their actions got worse?
At first, no, because they were younger, but as time progressed, as I said, when they started hitting their teenage years, that's when they started acting up.
So the longer that they were there. What did you catch her red-handed doing?
I was told several times that she had been sneaking out and doing things she shouldn't have been doing, going out with boys and things like that. And she would sometimes do things and just deny it to your face when you yourself know that it was true.
So earlier in your testimony, you stated that you caught her doing things red-handed.
I would say moreover what I was told from my brother.
So it was what you were being told, and that you never actually had real much first-hand knowledge of what she did.
Not that much.
So your statement earlier was incorrect?
I would say it is.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Anything else? Probably next witness.
Your Honor, at this time we call Jada upon the stand.
Promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Would you please state your name for the court?
Jada Conte,
And what's your date of birth, Ms. Aponte?
April 30th, 1967.
Could you please detail for the jury what, if any, educational experience you have?
Yes, I graduated from Methodist University with my social work degree in 1989, and therefore I went on to UNC Pembroke, and I did the advanced one-year program and graduated with my master's degree in social work in 1990.
After graduating college, did you go on to get a job in your field?
Yes, I did. I was certified by Cumberland County Schools to work as a social worker within the school system.
And have you held any other jobs at this point?
No,
No. Are you still a Cumberland County social worker?
I am.
How long have you been a Cumberland County social worker?
I've been a Cumberland County social worker for the past 10 years.
Your Honor, at this point, I ask that Ms. Aponte be tenured as an expert in the field of social work based on her education and experience.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
I court will allow her to testify as such and render opinion consistent therewith.
Thank you.
Proceed.
Ms. Ponte, I'd like to take you back to one particular case you were involved in, the case of Elizabeth Shannon. Do you recall that case?
Yes, I do.
Could you please tell for the jury how you became involved in that case?
I became involved with Elizabeth Shannon in 2000 at Ramsey Street Alternative School. I was her social worker there due to her being expelled from her public school from fighting and skipping classes and stuff like that.
What were some of your initial observations regarding Elizabeth?
When I first observed Elizabeth, she was the troubling child. She did not want to listen or take advice from any body who had more of the authority over her.
Would this include her parents' authority?
Yes, it did.
Now, did you ever meet her father, David Shannon?
Yes, I did.
Did you have a professional opinion of him?
Yes.
What was that opinion?
He was very caring when it came to the children within his family, as well as Daisy, Elizabeth, and the two younger children. he was more so strict on Elizabeth due to the fact that she was in Ramsey Street Alternative School from her being expelled and fighting and skipping and drinking and smoking and, you know, not really doing the good acts, I guess.
What were some of the bad acts that Elizabeth would do?
She would leave out the house, she would sneak out of the house, she would go drink and smoke and fight, as I stated before, in school.
Now, on a daily basis, did you speak with Elizabeth?
Yes, I did.
What were some of the things that came up as a result of those conversations?
She did not like the fact that her stepfather, David Shannon, put her on restrictive punishments.
You said that you work at Ramsey Street Alternative as
Yes.
a social worker, right? What were some of the issues you saw with children there?
Within my past experience at Ramsey Street Alternative School, there were a lot of gang affiliation within the children. There were a lot of fighting as well, and with me being her social worker and with her being involved in the student's life, they showed me some of the things that she did within the school system.
What were some of those things?
They brought to me some documents that she was drawing in class.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize these documents? I'm just going to do two at a time, as I did earlier.
Yes, I do.
Could you please describe, I'm sorry, excuse me, how did you first become familiar with these documents?
Like I said before, within my experience within Cumberland County school system and being that it is gang-related within the children's lives, as I see up here, there are a lot of crip activity, writings and drawings.
Okay. And that's relating to this document right here?
Yes, it is, both of them.
Both of those documents?
Tell us the number to the right.
Yes, sir. This is Defense Exhibit number 5 and Defense Exhibit 4. Moving on, I want to show you 3 documents this time. Could you please describe these 3 documents in the manner you just did the other 2?
The first Exhibit 3 shows 2 teardrops on the teddy bear's face, meaning that she or he, me assuming that it's Elizabeth because her name is stated on the bottom, therefore murdered someone. That's what a teardrop means. On Exhibit 2, she crosses out the X's and the B's within her name, and she has dead slob, which pertains to a blood. And also within Exhibit 1, she also crosses out within her name and gangsta as well, and she also has the Star of David, which represents the Crips.
Thank you, ma'am. Your Honor, at a later time, I would like to publish these to the jury. I believe we're giving them all at the end of the trial.
You want to introduce those?
Yes, sir, I'm sorry. At this one, I'd like to introduce these exhibits as evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Proceed without objection.
Now, Ms. Aponte, with all your experience and training and professional knowledge, do you have an opinion regarding Elizabeth Shannon?
I do.
What is that opinion?
My opinion is that she's not a well-rounded child. She is very disobedient when it comes to any authority or even her parents. She does not like to listen. She's very, when I do meet with her, she's very disturbing. She does not like to listen. She's just that child, the worst child that you can ever have.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, can you describe me your professional background? It says here that you have a degree of MSW. Can you tell me the difference between an MSW and a BSW? Can you It's your degree from UNC Pembroke?
Yes.
Social work?
Yeah.
Can you start with the difference between MSW and BSW?
Okay. Your bachelor's degree is more so of getting that 4-year experience, but when I got my master's degree, I more so got into the field and started working within the field, i.e. internship. I actually started working within the school systems and getting a better understanding of what a social worker should do within the actual world.
Thank you. So we have qualified you to be an expert witness in this?
Yes.
Is that correct? So tell me more about your relationship with Elizabeth. How often did you guys actually speak?
I met with Elizabeth on a daily basis. I want to say 5 times out of the week with her being in school.
5 times of the week with her being in school? So
Yes, Monday through Friday.
Now you stated earlier that she was at Ramsey Street Alternative because
Yes.
of what exactly? Because prior to what exactly? Sorry.
She went to Ramsey Street Alternative School because she got expelled out of her regular public school for fighting, skipping, and not going to class.
Okay, earlier in your statement you said something about drugs and alcohol, which
Yes.
is not the school's opinion in this case. It was for fighting instead?
Fighting and skipping to smoke and drink alcohol.
Is that the opinion of the school system?
I would say so, and more so to mine.
Was that ever documented?
Not that I know of.
So it can't be an actual factual. It's not an actual fact.
I would say so, yes.
Now, in describing earlier the evidence that the defense team put forward you, you said there were several game-related items as a part of that. How do you perform, or how well are you versed in knowing exactly what these all mean?
Well, like I said before, with me working 10 years within the Cumberland County school system, there are a lot of gang-related activities that do happen within regular public school system, as well as especially in alternative school system.
Now, the descriptions, you described several different types of, or your description of her drawings, you described several different things in there. Now, there's multiple gangs in there, so how could you say that Elizabeth was really affiliated with either one?
No, I stated before on the picture, she would crosses out the B's and the S's, and she would have a 6-point star, and she would write Crip. So with her marking out the B's and the S's within her name, she would be more so affiliated with the Crip gang instead of the Blood gang.
And now, in your statement that was released to us from the defense team, you stated that her gang was Killer Army, not Crip.
Well, the overall gang is the Crips. Now, they can be divided into different categories, but overall, she is a part of, from my opinion, and what she drew, she is a part of the Crip gang. However, Crips and other Bloods or whatever you want to say, they do have certain names for the different sections that they are in.
So then that would be your opinion on that, not the actual fact, not actual fact.
It can be a fact and it can be an opinion.
I'm asking you the difference.
Are you asking me?
I was asking you.
Is it
in this case, would you consider it to be a fact or opinion?
I would say that from the drawings that I received from the school system, it is a fact.
Did Elizabeth ever admit to you that she was involved in a gang?
Of course not. If someone is in a gang, why would they admit it?
In your statement to us, in your statement that you released to the defense team and to us, it said that you did know that.
Did know what?
That she was in a gang.
Okay.
And that she admitted to you that she was in a gang at some point in time.
I don't recall that.
You don't recall that? We're just reading from your statement. And now you said that would anything lead you to believe that because of a gang that she would be involved in any kind of serious crime?
Yes, I will.
Any questions, Your Honor?
Can you raise your hand?
Yes, Your Honor.
Two questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Condon, are there subset gangs of more larger gangs?
Yes, there is.
Is that the case in this particular instance?
Yes, there is.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Anything else? Think maybe you come down, Cardi, next week.
Your Honor, at this time, we would like to call the defendant, Joe Shannon.
To tell the truth,
name's Joan Shannon.
And Mrs. Shannon, how old are you?
I'm 38.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in New York.
Can you tell me a little bit about your childhood in New York?
Let's see, when I was 12, my parents left me and I wound up getting into foster care.
And how exactly was foster care for you?
It was okay. It was better than my home life was.
What exactly do you mean?
My father liked to touch me.
Like to touch you how?
He molested me.
So did you have a better relationship with your foster parents?
I did, but it wasn't the greatest, which is probably why I dropped out of high school.
You need to raise your voice.
Raise my voice? Okay.
So after you dropped out of high school, what did you do?
I worked at a topless bar to be able to support my daughters after I married Randy, of course.
You were married?
Yes, I married Randy.
And what happened to that marriage?
He went to prison for drug dealing, and which is why I divorced him.
So you said that you worked at a topless bar. Why did you exactly do that?
Because you make more money.
Were you doing anything else while working there?
Yes, I went back and got my GED and then got my degree in business.
So after receiving your business degree, what did you do?
I quit the topless bar and I began dating, and that's when I met David online.
Do you remember what year that was?
1990.
So, what year did you and David get married?
I asked David to marry me in 1991.
So only a year after?
Yeah.
Did anything else special happen that year?
He adopted Daisy and Elizabeth.
And those are your two kids?
Yes.
How would you describe yours and David's relationship?
David and I had a very open relationship. He treated me as an equal. He treated me better than any other guy that I had in the past.
So you say you had a very, did you say open relationship?
Yes.
And what do you mean by that?
David and I were into swinging.
What do you mean by swinging?
David would find these couples online and we would have sexual intercourse with them.
How often would you swing?
Maybe about 2 or 3 times a week, maybe.
How did you and David, so you said that you met those other swingers online?
Yes.
Is that how you met Jeffrey Wilson?
Yes, David found Jeffrey and then introduced me to him.
How many times a week did you and Jeffrey meet?
About 3 or 4 times.
Why so often?
Because the sex was good.
So sex between you and your husband wasn't good?
No, it was good. It was just different. It was more intimate. There was more lovemaking. There was more passion. With Jeffrey, it was just basically just fucking.
How was your relationship with your daughter?
My relationship with Elizabeth, it was difficult. She was hard to manage. She was hard to get a grip on. It was very hard for me to punish her, I should say, because I was more of a friend to her rather than a mother.
Okay. Can you describe Elizabeth's personality?
Elizabeth is a very stubborn child. She's manipulative. She's rebellious. She's violent, which is how she got kicked out of school.
So you say Elizabeth's violent. So would you ever give Elizabeth a gun?
No.
So I'm going to take you back to the night of July 22nd, 2002. Do you remember what happened that night?
Me and Elizabeth went to go pick up Vera because she was staying the night at our house. Whenever we got back to the house, they went to Elizabeth's room. Then I went to go check on David, and he was in his computer room. And then I found myself being in the living room, just hanging out.
Did you see Elizabeth or Vera anymore that night?
Yes, I saw them at 11 when I went to go check on them and told them I was going to bed.
So after telling them you were going to bed, did you go to sleep?
David and I watched a movie, and then we had an intimate moment, and then we went to sleep.
Okay. So after falling asleep, do you remember what happened next?
I woke up with a loud banging sound of like a smell in the air.
And then whenever my vision came to, I saw like a shadow moving around the room, and that's when I heard another shot, and then the shadow left.
Were you scared at all?
I was terrified. I really had no clue what was going on. Like, I was in shock, literally.
So what did you do after the shadow left your bedroom?
I crawled to the end of the room to see if I could find the shadow. But at that point, my main concern was my kids, seeing if they were safe or what was going on.
So why didn't you check on your husband first?
My motherly instinct just kicked over. I was more concerned about my kids.
So you went to check on your kids in their room?
Yeah, the boys were asleep, and then when I got to Elizabeth's room, the door was locked, so I wasn't able to enter.
So was that unusual that her door was locked?
It just wasn't locked earlier that night.
So after checking on the kids, what did you do?
I called 911.
So after you called 911 and the police arrived at your home, what happened?
I talked to Detective Murphy, and he did a test to see if I'd shot a gun recently.
Okay. Do you remember Detective Murphy asking you if it was okay if he performed this test on you?
No, he didn't.
What happened after Detective Murphy did perform this test?
He said I needed to go downtown for further questioning.
No further questions.
Now, if we may back up a little bit here, Joan, you said you obviously lived a very difficult young life, is that correct?
Yeah.
And while you were still going through your divorce and such, you were working as an erotic dancer, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
With children were your 2 children in your possession at that time?
Yes.
Did you find it difficult to balance being a mother and being a dancer?
It's hard, but there's single mothers everywhere in the world.
Upon meeting David, did you feel as though things got easier?
Yes.
At that point, did you feel like you were capable of raising children on your own with David?
Yes.
Why is it that you had to ask David to marry you?
I don't know. I felt like I was the luckiest girl in the world, so I just wanted to grab it and go with it.
So now, you asking him, you assume more of a dominant role early in the relationship, is that correct?
I guess you could say that.
But yet, it seems as though later on, he became the one who had to enforce everything, as if you weren't capable of doing that?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, me and Elizabeth, our relationship didn't really allow me to enforce it because I was more of a friend to her because I didn't know how to handle her.
Now, given your background and things that you had done to get by, is it really that you were more open to the idea of swinging, or David was the one more open to the idea of swinging?
He introduced me with the idea.
Do you ever think that kind of thing impacted your ability to be a good mother?
Come again?
Did you feel as though your lifestyle of swinging impacted your ability to be a good mother?
No, I don't, because I was still there for my kids.
You testified earlier that you were out of the home at least 2 to 3 times a week for swinger parties. It's a lot of time outside the home.
Yeah, it's the same as when people go to work.
Do you believe that your children's opinions of you was ever affected by your actions in these parties?
My children's opinion.
Of you?
Of me? No.
No. How many people would you say that you partnered with while swinging?
Like with David or?
In general.
Maybe like 5 to 7.
Did you ever develop relationships with any of them?
Relationship as in more than just.
More than just.
Yeah.
How many would you say?
5.
5?
About 5.
And was Jeffrey Wilson one of those?
Yes.
Was Jeffrey Wilson unique in any way compared to any of your other relationships?
No, he was just convenient at the time.
So he was the same as your other relationships?
Yes.
So you brought your children around multiple men in multiple relationships then?
Not all of them came to my house, no.
But you say that they were all similar and the same.
About how I felt towards them, yes.
How many of these other men did you take your daughters around?
None.
None. So he was unique in that way then. So he was different.
Well, in that case, yes.
Do you feel like that affected your relationship with your daughter?
With Elizabeth or Daisy?
Elizabeth.
Yes and no, because at that time we were already close, so it didn't really matter.
So it didn't feel like it diminished your ability to be a parent and be assertive in her?
No.
Did you ever, now we received lots of testimony earlier, did you ever develop feelings and ask Mr. Wilson to run away with you?
To run away with me?
Yes.
No.
Did you ever develop feelings for Mr. Wilson?
Besides just hookups, no.
Okay, so earlier we also heard in the record from Detective Murphy, it stated that following the scene, you admitted to Detective Murphy that you did indeed love him and that you loved him way more than your husband. So was that a lie then?
I didn't love him more than my husband. That was never mentioned earlier, because I've never said that. I might have loved having sex with him more than my husband. That does not mean I love him more.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
You can go on the bottom paragraph for me to yourself.
Your Honor, I object the marking, the paperwork that the.
Oh, well, let me read it. You got a question?
I'm done reading.
Do you happen to recall making?
Parentheses. Judges are not always right, judges are not always reasonable, but they're always the judge.
Do you happen to recall making these remarks?
I mean, just because you say you're in love with someone doesn't mean you're in love with them.
So you, in this case, for no reason, lied to the detective about loving someone?
I mean, I didn't lie. You can love somebody. That doesn't mean that you want to run away with them.
Fair enough. Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything else?
Why did you, now going back to your relationship with Elizabeth, why is it that you allowed her to stay at home when you guys were on vacations when she was such a young child?
I mean, 12 is really not that young, but she was just stubborn and she didn't want to go.
But 12 was old enough to stay alone when you knew that she was a difficult child?
Well, I mean, would you rather go on everybody's vacation?
I'd rather not be a child person. Did you feel as though that she was capable of caring for herself?
Yes, I did. At 12, I did.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. You can redirect.
No, Your Honor.
Think you can come down. Any more evidence? Ladies and gentlemen, that's all the evidence. You'll now be privileged to hear the closing statements of the lawyers. Remember that closing statements are not evidence. They are simply what the attorney believes the admissible evidence might tend to show. If an attorney attempts to restate a portion of the evidence and your recollection of the evidence is different from that of the attorneys, you are to be guided strictly by your own recollection. What order do we go in, Ms. Monaghan?
The prosecutors are going first, Your Honor.
Okay, how many? One for each side?
They're one for each side.
All right. All ready?
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
All right, may proceed.
Your Honor, may I move her out of the room?
Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you're about to hear remarks from the defense team here on why exactly all these things seem so circumstantial, on how the fact that 6 people can report, multiple people can report, and the fact that evidence was one way and that one person can try and dispute it to be the other. The detectives did a thorough job of the scene. Our forensic tech did a thorough job in marking all the pictures. They did their background, they did their work. And what they showed you was that there was no sign of a break-in. They showed you that it was in cold blood. The forensic evidence came back and showed you that the only person with any kind of gun residue on their hand was Miss Shannon. We showed you that Elizabeth, her friends, and even people that didn't even know the family and had no biased opinion on this, felt as though that Elizabeth was not capable of doing it by herself and that she was being influenced by someone else. An influence in a home that was not fit for a child. Someone who would leave their child alone at 12 when they knew and stated that she was a troubled child. It's not a fit environment. That is someone who could be influenced to do anything. They said that she was weak. And Elizabeth was a troubled child. A troubled child because she had a troubled background and a parent who wasn't there for her. Within the evidence, you'll see that she was clearly motivated by someone else and did not do the planning by herself. And for this reason, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we believe that she is and should be convicted on first-degree murder. No further, Your Honor.
All right, what's this?
Christian, move about that. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I'd like to thank you for your service here today. I know this has not been an easy trial. It's been boring at times, and interesting at few, and frankly, you all look like you'd rather be somewhere else at this point. I'm going to make this brief as I can. How many of you are familiar with the chemical composition of water? 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. Most middle schoolers know it. I know it, and I'm not that smart. But it's a lot like this case when you think about it. The state failed to mention this probably because they didn't want you to think about it, but there's 3 elements, much like water, to what they have to prove to you today. Intent, premeditation, and malice. Their burden today is to prove those 3 things to you beyond a reasonable doubt. If they fail to meet even one of those 3 aspects, they don't have a case, and their case doesn't hold water. Now today they brought up Anthony Jones. Anthony Jones was a gentleman, and I use that term loosely, who was going to attempt to show you that Joan reached out to try to put some hit out on her husband. He didn't say anything of the sort. He told you about how Elizabeth initiated contact with him, how Elizabeth reached out and brought him to her home, how Elizabeth asked him for a gun, and how Elizabeth offered him $3,000 to $5,000 to kill her stepfather. And then, if you recall, toward the end of my cross-exam with that witness, he's actually here, along with other charges, to try to benefit himself. He's facing 13 counts of statutory rape, but right now he's only getting probation because of his cooperation here today. I don't know about you, but I'd sing whatever song they told me to sing to get out of that. They also brought up Vera Thompson, who was Elizabeth's best friend. Now, Miss Thompson and Miss Shannon, Elizabeth Shannon, did everything together. They stole Vera's mother's car. They lied to police officers on 3 separate occasions. They'd sneak out, smoke weed, and do everything together. Now, on 3 separate occasions, Vera gave statements to police officers. The first was the night of the murder, where she said she didn't know anything. Then we progressed further, and she told Detective Baker that, oh, I know something, but I don't want to get Elizabeth in trouble. And finally, we're here today where she told Detective Kimball that, yeah, it was Elizabeth, but she only did it because Joan pressured her to. She changed her story 3 times, but she's here asking us to believe her. And then there's Elizabeth. Elizabeth was their star witness, the one who actually killed David. The night of the murder, she gave a statement. I don't know anything. I was asleep. Then she gets arrested in August. She's facing life, maybe even death. We don't know what they charged her with. We don't know the penalty for that. Could have been death. She changed her story. I did it, but only because my mommy made me do it. When she got pulled over by the cop for test firing the gun, she didn't tell the police officer that. She had a way out. She didn't take it. She chose not to tell anybody when supposedly Joan was trying to poison her father. She kept that to herself. But she changed her story when it was convenient to her. She admitted to putting a bullet in her father's forehead and another in his chest when she saw the one in his head didn't do the job the first time. She is a cold-blooded killer, and you cannot believe a word she says. There's no physical evidence that ties my client to this crime. They tried to produce some sort of gunshot residue kit that was conducted without a warrant and without my client's consent. Other than that, there's nothing. There's no videotape, no DNA, no actual eyewitness testimony that says, I saw Joan pull the trigger. Nothing. All they have is the word of a murderer, a rapist, and a liar. I don't know about you. That doesn't sound like beyond a reasonable doubt to me. that case does not hold water. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll send you to the jury room in just a minute to decide this case. You will have two choices: to find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder or not guilty. The state has proved to you that the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You are the sole judges of the believability of any witness. You may believe part, some, or none of what a witness has said from the witness stand. You're also the sole judges of the weight to be given to any evidence. You must decide if you believe evidence, what significance that has. You may also, there are two types of evidence. One is direct evidence, one is circumstantial evidence. You put the same weight on each. Let me tell you what first-degree murder is. First-degree murder is the unlawful and intentional killing of a human being with malice, with premeditation, and deliberation. For a person to be guilty of a crime, including first-degree murder, it is not necessary that he personally do all the acts necessary to constitute the crime. If two or more persons join in a common purpose to commit the crime of first-degree murder, each of them, if actually or constructively present, is not only guilty of that crime if the other person commits the crime, but is also guilty of any other crime committed by the other pursuance of the common purpose to commit first-degree murder. The presiding judge is supposed to be impartial. You're not to take anything that I have said or done, or any expression on my face, or inflection in my voice, or any question that I have asked to indicate to you that this evidence should be believed or disbelieved. You must agree unanimously on a verdict. When you get to the jury room, select one of your members to be your foreperson. That person will lead you into deliberations. When you have a unanimous verdict, knock on the door, tell the bailiff, and he'll bring you back in. Any questions that you might have, send out to me on a piece of paper, which I will give to you. And you can use the pencil I gave to you to write that question.
Yeah, but I don't think they were sharpened, that's the problem.
I think that's the point. No.
Guys, if you'll just stay seated, because this is when Judge Ammons is going to give you some feedback.
All right, listen up. First of all, this is not real life. You're not real lawyers. And we're compressing a murder case that lasted several weeks into a couple hours here. This is a real case, however, with real testimony. And that's what Jones said, I think, on the witness stand when you used the profanity. I don't have any problem with that. Some of the folks in Methodist might, I don't know. But we're trying to teach you about real life. All right, toward that end, my remarks are only to give you some feedback. And remember, just like what I told you when I came to talk to the class, it's only my opinion. Overall, it was very good. Every year, this class just impresses me. I just tried a case last week with two very inexperienced lawyers, and y'all were just as good, if not better, than both of them. I hope that you had fun. I hope that you learned something. Now, you got to remember, and I understand, you know, I'm criticizing you and critiquing you as if you are lawyers, and you're not. And as if you know what you're doing and you've tried cases before, and you haven't. But you got to remember, and I'll try to set the stage for you a little bit. I came in here, wait, criminal case? I thought I was doing a civil case. Okay, the judge doesn't know anything about the case. I don't know a thing about it. They don't know a thing about it. So it's important that you communicate that to them. Remember, I told you about telling a story. These people don't know anything, and I try to communicate that. I try to use a little humor. I also try to be a little goofy at times. I try to be a little strict at times, because you're going to have all types of those things come from different judges, and sometimes from the same judge in a trial. So remember, I don't know anything about the case. The jury didn't know anything about the case. You need to introduce yourself. I was confused about who was who. I still don't know who had the gunshot residue on their hand. And I even asked that question. So introduce your fellow attorneys. Tell them who you are. Tell them who you represent. Point out the people. My client here is Jones Shannon, who's been accused of murder. The victim here is Colonel David Shannon. Major, I think it was a major.
Yeah, major.
Major. He's not Mr., he's Major. because he's got a title that adds a little bit something. Now, his life's not worth any more than a mister, but it makes it seem more important. Elizabeth, right here, point to her. She's your witness. She's going to tell you about how she killed her stepfather. And she's going to tell you why she did that her mother drove her to this, and we're going to prove that. Point these people out. The jury was kind of lost, I was kind of lost. But like I said, I understand this is compressed. I never really heard a theory from either side until the end. And your theory was great at the end. I really never heard a theory about how this all came about. And I was really confused, and although I didn't try this case, I followed this case very well when it happened. I've read the opinions on it, and I've seen some of the evidence. All right, let's get to the individual. Caleb Thompson. Who the heck is Mr. Shannon? You should have said Major Shannon. I've already mentioned that. Good start, though. You moved a little bit too much in your opening statement. That's what I'm talking about now. And I'm about to lose my voice. But that was nerves, and that's okay. I loved greed, love, and sex. Give your thing a theme so they can talk about it. That was good. But who was Elizabeth? You need to kind of bring all that back in at the end. And you missed that opportunity in the closing. You should have hit on his points in the closing. I loved the blood has been spilled. Very good. Very good. And it was very good overall. Bacon? Mm-hmm. Okay. You hold a woman's life in your hands. That's very good. You opened... Open something gold. I don't know what that is. Open-minded. You told him to be open-minded, to scrutinize the evidence. You introduced yourself, and I think you did this in that order. I think you asked them that, and then you came back and told them who the people were, and that's fine. Remember, I told you you can hit them with a good punch. You know, on the night of such and such, laying in his bed, minding his own business in the safety of his own home, Major David Shannon is cruelly murdered. And then you can come back and say, I'm the prosecutor, this is my team, we're going to prove to you this. Where are we? Introduce self, and then you, I don't know what that says either. I've tried to be very not clear. What about the defendant? You need to introduce her. Nobody ever introduced her. I don't think. Is that correct? You introduced all of them, but you didn't introduce her.
I said something about her, but
Okay.
I didn't really introduce her.
I think I was asleep at that part. What about the defendant? Yeah, you need to introduce her. That's what this is. Your pace was a little too fast at first, but once again, that's nerves, and that's fine. You talked about her. You tried to humanize her. You know, she is not the demon. She's not the devil. She is not a murderer. She's a working mother, an adored sister-in-law. Ties in with the evidence that you're later going to put on. Adored daughter-in-law. You personalize the defendant, that's very good. It's the responsibility of the state. Very good. Tell them what the state's responsibility is. And then you say that it's your responsibility to do these other things. Very good. Put it on them from the very beginning. Put it on the state and put it on the jury. Carrie, where's Carrie? The witness, Carrie Sonnen? Okay, there you are. A little stiff, but just like a lot of law enforcement officers are. They get up there and they're stiff. You'd think they make the greatest witnesses in the world because they testify all the time. In actuality, they don't testify all the time. They very rarely testify, and they get just as nervous as anybody else, and they get just as stiff, and they talk, like I told you, they talk in technical terms, and sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. You had a very professional bearing. You did talk about the medical examination, which you should have said autopsy. Taylor directed her, good questions. You led the witness through the testimony. You didn't know the magical questions, and we talked about that, but that's fine. You recovered from that. You went on from that with some help from Mr. Baker. Kara, you did the cross. Who was Kimball? When you start talking about a Kimball, and we didn't know who Kimball was. You got your witness back on track You got witness back on track, and that was good. Okay, Detective Mike Murphy. Where's Mike? I actually love the real Mike Murphy. I mean, he's a great guy. He's a great cop, and he's a great guy. You were calm, had a good voice. You knew your part very well. But you never told us where Mr. Shannon was lying in the bed. Nobody ever asked him that either. Talked about the wounds to him, but nobody ever said, you know, where they found him. At least I don't remember hearing that. You had a professional voice and demeanor. You misstated, I thought, the results of the GSR test, but hell, it could maybe, I still don't understand. Who had a positive one? Joan? Okay. And y'all never talked about that. Y'all didn't talk about that. And you skipped it conveniently, which you should. You should skip it. You had good answers on cross, and you did something else. Great something on cross. Did you give an opinion? I don't know.
He did. He gave an opinion.
Yeah, it's a great opinion on cross. That's what that word says. Caleb, expert. Why do you keep talking about expert with these police officers? I don't. You can talk about their training and experience, but it's very hard to get somebody qualified as an expert in police. And to what end? I mean, is he going to give an opinion? You're not going to let him. I'm not going to let you ask him. Do you think she did it? No, you didn't ask where the victim was lying. You had him tell his story though pretty well. You guided him, and then we already talked about the GSR. Megan, you did this one again. You didn't know the technical rules, but that's okay. You're not a lawyer, but you came back from that. Now, at this point, I noticed something that you do, and believe me, almost everybody does it to some extent. I think I've told you about the lawyers that say, and I got one assistant district attorney cannot ask a question to save her life without saying, and what'd you do then? And where'd you go then? You say a lot. And when you watch the tape, you'll see it. But almost all of us have something like Charles Kimball. I know the real Chuck Kimball too, great guy. Voice, it was a little bit low. You were calm. And that's kind of the way Chuck is. Let me ask you this. Did any of you actually go out and try to meet the person you were playing? Or try to meet, you did, try to meet a social worker and talk to them? I was going to say, I thought maybe you might have, because you were very good. And that's just the key to learning your part. Go out, and this was a perfect case.
Well, I purposely didn't ask any of them to come. I thought I could get them to come after. I didn't want them to influence how they went through the case. That's why.
Well, if that was against the rules, that's fine. But you should at least have talked to a police officer or a detective or a social worker like she did and said, you know, can you give me some pointers here? Or come and watch some court. And I know we all got lots of things to do. But I thought you were very good. Caleb, you kept asking about the expert. The hearsay, you moved on from being sustained. Once I sustained the objection that they finally made on the hearsay, you moved on very well from that. Jordan, your objection was good. You have a very professional voice, a very professional demeanor. And then you said this, I tried to quote you, just so I and the rest of this court understand. Now, that's a great thing to say. A lot of judges won't let you get away with it. It's something I would say. Just so I can make it, just so we understand what you're saying here. And then you get them to restate it, you stake them out, and I thought that was very good. If they had objected, I don't know, half the judges would have said, just ask questions. I let it go, because I like watching lawyers work. I like watching people get out there in the field of this courtroom and do their job work. So I try to let them go. Detective Thomas Baker, okay. Good voice, good demeanor, you knew your part. You did say Joan Elizabeth Shannon. And you got a problem here. I think I may have told you this. I tried a murder case in Lumberton in which the victim's last name was Brett. And the defendant's last name was Brett. And the district attorney's last name was Brett. And one of the two defense attorneys was Brett, and the detective on the case was Brett. And do you think that's not confusing? I mean, when you have people with the same name, you got 3, 4 Shannons here. you got to, and well, Shannon doesn't sound like her last name. You got to make sure you make it clear who you're talking about. And one time you did say Joan Elizabeth Shannon, I think. And I don't know what Joan's real name is. It may be Joan Elizabeth Shannon, but she got a daughter named Elizabeth, right? You know, so it was confusing. You had kind of gotten into the rhythm, and getting ready to ask whether anybody else was going to ask any questions or not. But you'd gotten into the rhythm. You were comfortable, and you moved through this witness very well. The team on this one. You should have objected to the hearsay. A ton of hearsay came in, and a ton of opinion came in too. But sometimes you let it in on purpose. Sometimes you let it in on purpose because you want to get hearsay in, or you want to get opinion in from the same witness, or sometimes you let it go, and I understand that. One thing, and I try to help a lot in the beginning, because I've done this a lot now, I find that you're so focused on your own case that you forget about these people. And the same thing, you're so focused on your own case. And a couple times I saw you sitting there, you know, kind of huddling up, or kind of, and you're not paying attention to what the other side's doing. Both of you did that. So in the beginning, I try to kind of make some objections or clear my throat like I did, and then toward the end, I let it go and just let y'all do what you want to. I do think sometimes you're so ready to go. I mean, you've prepped so much for this that you forget about the other side. And that happens to real attorneys too. You can't believe how many attorneys will give a great direct examination and then just kind of go off to la-la land or go to sleep while the other side destroys them. Kara, on this one. Good questions, you got good info, and then you got out. And that's exactly what I told you to do on cross-examination. Get that good info and get out. And if you're not getting good info, get out anyway. You said something like, hope you will, this is my note to me. I was hoping that the good info that you got with this witness, you were going to tie in later, either through your evidence or through his closing. And I can't remember what this witness said, but I think you did. Derek Humphrey, where is he? The voice was a little bit low, but you knew your part well. You were believable, okay? Is it Chesmaine? That close? Good questioning. You were a little fast, but then you got your info and you got out too. And then, Ray Boy? Okay. Did you do the redirect on this?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. It's a good follow-up on redirect. You were quick. Once again, you got in and got out. And Megan, that was a good cross. Very good cross. Vera Thompson, voice was a little bit low, but you knew your part. It's hard to look like a 14-year-old. But I thought you did a very good job. Same thing, you kind of led her through it. And did a good job. Hearsay, lots of hearsay. Megan, you got good points on cross, very good points. And then I wrote down you got good points on cross, and then I wrote down very good points on cross, so it kept getting better. You did, however, go on too long. You should have stopped after the good points and the very good points. Went on a little long, and you lost some of your good points by continuing to go on. Elizabeth Shannon.
She had to go to a lacrosse game. She's one of our stars.
Yeah, she flunks. She's gone.
But we'd love to hear what you think about Elizabeth.
She had a good voice. She sounded to me like a streetwise 14 to 15-year-old. She sounded like one.
Her dad was in here, and he said that
Yeah.
that was. Yeah, Judge Evans, her father is still here, so you can do the comments.
She was very good. She told a good story. There was, however, and y'all didn't correct this, then she started talking about her pregnant sister. I completely missed that. I didn't know who it was. I guess it was Daisy, right?
Yeah.
But that she talked about it, and that wasn't really explained. Once again, very good questionings. Mr. Brayboy, you had a good response to the objection. I can't remember what the objection was. I don't remember. But I wrote down that you made a good response to the objection. Jordan? Not the first statement. Okay, you talk about not the first statement right after each of the three. You said, was that the truth? I thought all that was good. You're hammering on this person. I mean, this is the linchpin. If you don't believe her, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my client's not guilty. You got to believe her. Don't thank the witnesses though. A lot of people do that. You thank the witness and then you thank me. You thank me a couple times. Don't do that. Try not to say or do anything without a purpose. And maybe your purpose was in thanking the witness to ginger yourself to the jury, or maybe your purpose in thanking me was to ginger yourself to me. But that's don't do that. It was a great cross. You pushed the envelope a little bit on the cross. And I like that. I like it, but it can be dangerous. If they had jumped on you, you can lose a lot of credibility. Long cross, but it was still very good. You did start to lose the jury, but it was very good. And it was, if you're going to do a long cross, do it on the main witness, who's main evidence against you. Anthony, somebody? Another witness? Anthony Jones. Good voice. You sounded like someone who had done something wrong. Very good witness. Very good witness. Great boy, great voice, great pace. You got in, and then you moved on. And I thought it was a very good direct. Jordan, all I wrote there was two things. Stop thanking the witness, and very good cross. I thought it was very good. Jeffrey Wilson, where are you little scoundrel? You know, the real Jeffrey Wilson got brought back here from Germany.
Tell them 5 minutes. We'll come back.
They're
on?
11 to 1.
Judge Ammons, should I bring them back in and you tell them that they...
Tell them that I'll be ordering pizza in a few minutes if they don't reach a verdict.
Yeah, tell them they need to reach a verdict.
Who's the one? Tell me what names.
The real Jeffrey Wilson was brought back here to testify in this trial by the Army. He's just thinking he's coming back. Well, golly, I got to go testify in this murder trial. When he got back to his base in Germany, he found out that he had charges against him. And I'm pretty sure he was put out of the Army. He ended up getting what he deserved. Your voice was a little low, but I don't mean this in a bad way. You sounded like a sleazebag. And you were playing a sleazebag, so you did. You said it was a good job, and you knew your part very, very well. Great boy. Very good. You clarified things with him. You got out the good details, and you got out the good points. And I think this is a quote. Oh, I didn't like this. You said from the time of the incident. The incident, hell, it's a murder. From the time of the incident, you know, the late unpleasantness, you know, it's a murder. Call it what it is. Kara, great cross. You got good points. And then I wrote this down. Ask him about, you should have asked him about the importance of the vows that he took when he testified here. And then I had to scratch that out because you did. You did exactly what I was saying you should have done. You talked about the vows that he took, and then you kind of left that. And I said, golly, she should have mentioned this solemn oath here. And then you came right back to it. I thought that was great. Military justice, and your thing is you say and a lot. And. But I didn't notice till then. Okay, defendant's witnesses, Brenda Strong, sister-in-law of defendant. I got to tell you, you sounded to me like you really knew David. You sounded like you actually knew him. I was very impressed with that. I mean, you just, sometimes I forget that y'all are actors playing a part, and I did with you. You sounded just like you knew David. Kara, you're starting to get more and more of the and, but you had a very good cross, and you got out all the good points that you could get from her. I mean, you want to humanize this person. You want to say, my God, the dead guy's family doesn't even believe he did this. You know, how the hell can y'all believe he did this when his own sister doesn't believe she did this? Great boy, I just wrote down great cross. I started getting writing less and less. Jada Aponte, very good. You sounded just like a social worker. You knew your part well. You gave very good testimony, and the other thing was I was going to ask you, did you talk to one? And you've already told us that you did talk to one. You prepared very well. And the other thing I wrote down was your answers on cross. I said you answered questions on cross well. And then I came back and I wrote, you kept going, and I said you answered questions on cross very well. It just kept getting better. Jordan is a good direct, pretty good, and good on the exhibits. I don't know what that means.
You got the pictures on.
Yeah, and I wrote down for you, she was hard to cross.
Yeah.
She was just hard to cross. And sometimes you just run up against a witness like that and you just have to kind of cut your losses. Joan Shannon, very good. You sounded very realistic. You had a very clear voice. And I've read some of the transcripts. I saw some of the testimony, and you kind of had that, not catatonic, but kind of, this is my life. This is what I do. I have sex with my husband because I love him. I have sex with this other guy because he's good. I mean, you just kind of had that whole demeanor. And I thought it was very, very good. Megan Jones, very good. You got Joan's story out in a logical, believable way. You still with the ums. The one thing you didn't do that I kept waiting for, and if this was a real case, and you knew that she really did kill him, you can't ask these questions. Okay? So maybe that's why you didn't ask it. I don't know. You need to ask the ultimate question. Did you kill your husband? Did you help anyone kill your husband? Do you know who killed your husband? Because her story is some shadowy figure did it. She's not even saying that Elizabeth did it on her own. I don't know why the hell she did it. She's saying, I don't know. At least that's the theory I got from it, right? So you got to ask the ultimate questions. A murder case is about the only one that you almost always have to put the defendant on. And when you put the defendant on, you got to ask him, did you do this? And you got to have him deny it. Okay, Gray Boy, in the beginning, you were just kind of fishing. You were kind of like bumping around, just asking questions that you didn't know the answer to, hoping that you would get something good. And then you started talking to her about being a swinger and being a good mother. And that's okay because you're trashing the defendant. And that's all right. But really, you should have gotten up and said, who cares? Ladies and gentlemen, she did things that my wife and I don't do, and that you probably don't do with your wife. But that doesn't make her a murderer. You didn't really defend her, and they spent a lot of time trashing her. But that was the only, when I get to your closing, I'll let you know. And I wrote, hell, you claim she's a murderer. You need to talk about the money. You got this money when he died. You got the Army benefits when he died. You got to go have sex with anybody that you want to, even though you're doing it already, and not have to worry about sneaking around. But she's the defendant. She's the one you got to hit hard. Now, close it. I said this was the most important part, at least to me. I said it was the most important part. And yours was way too short. Way too short. You trashed the defendant, what you really should have been doing. And it's okay to trash the defendant, because you want them to hate her. But then you need to tell them why they should. And I tried to help you out there a little bit with acting in concert. And I'm not saying you should have found that instruction, but I mean, you need to tell, my God, hell, Elizabeth killed him. What are they trying her for? I mean, that's what jurors think. Why are they trying her? Elizabeth killed her. State proved to me that Elizabeth killed him. But you got to tie in how she's guilty too. All right, you're closing. Good start, good middle, and a great finish. And you had good movement too. Now, sometimes we move because we're nervous. Sometimes we move because we're trying to think. Sometimes we move to make a point. But you said something like, she lied in the first story. She lied in the second story. And I was expecting you to move. You kind of shifted, but you didn't really move. You should have moved, and she lied in the third story, ladies and gentlemen. The third story she told you today is a lie. You said Elizabeth actually killed David, and that's true. Pounded on that. I really kind of like the water analogy too. I thought, well, I'm not sure whether I like that or not in the beginning. But then you came full circle. And that's what I mean about pieces of evidence. Come full circle. Get something out during the trial or something in the beginning of your argument and come back around to us. And then the coming full circle was, in this case, doesn't hold water. You hit just about every point you could. I was trying to think of what else you could say. And I'm sure there was something to defend your client. Then I wrote small. I don't know what small meant. I think I stopped writing when you did the key part because I really like the ending. Okay.
All right, we'll bring Jerry in.
Overall, everybody did an excellent job. She didn't let me grade you, but I'd give you all of that. Even you. I hope that you had fun. I hope that you learned something. I hope this wasn't too traumatic preparation, the trial, particularly listening to me.
Jury's locked out.
Country kids.
No,
Okay.
It's locked, so
You had one job, Cody.
All right, court's back in session.
I said it's class so that they can.
How many were we all together?
16.
I thought I was going to have to order a pizza that was
You were hoping.
15/16 pepperoni and 1/16 sausage. All right, who speaks for this jury?
I do, Your Honor.
All right, if you answer my questions, just yes or no. Has the jury reached a unanimous verdict?
Yes, we have, Your Honor.
All right, you prepared to pronounce the verdict?
Yes, sir.
All right, defendants, please rise. What says this jury?
Your Honor, the jury unanimously finds the defendant not guilty.
Okay. Let's see a little happy dance now. All right, thank you very much. Now, I don't want to minimize your importance to this exercise. I mean, obviously, each side wants to win this case, but to me, it's more important that they learn something, and we make it realistic by asking you to go out. And based on the way the evidence came out in this case, in this trial, I agree with you. I just don't think the state proved it beyond a reasonable doubt. But she did it.
Oh, and she's guilty.
You can look at those eyes. All right. It would be helpful if y'all could, for just a couple of minutes, maybe say some words to the students about what you thought. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
With the life insurance one, I think you guys would have proven to me if you would have had her as the beneficiary.
Yeah.
Proven that, because there's no way a 15-year-old could have $3 grand.
Yeah.
And we all wanted somebody to directly ask her, did you get your daughter to kill your husband? Something. Yeah.
Well, I told the defense they should have asked her that. They needed to have her deny that. Of course, now if they ask her, she's simply going to say no. Right. But I think it is important to ask because the jury gets to hear that question to ask, and you get to examine the. And some people will go, golly, I believe her, and some jurors will go, she's lying.
Errol, give some feedback, because these guys are going into law enforcement, so that's why they were the detectives and the CSI, and you do this quite often.
The jury, as we talked, as far as the defendant, we felt like she was guilty, and we wanted to find her guilty, but based on the judge's instructions, we just felt like the prosecution did not prove beyond a reasonable doubt. As far as the witness statements and on the law enforcement end, I saw several of you doing it. I don't know if Ms. Vonica has taught you this, but I like to see, and I think it's very effective to a jury, and now sitting over here because I've never had the opportunity to sit on a jury because of my job. If you'll turn and talk to the jury and make eye contact with them, it builds that personal relationship with the jury. They're going to like you, they're going to believe you, because if you're a law enforcement officer, you're telling them nothing but the truth and the facts. And it's hard sometimes, but never let a defense attorney get under your skin. They're just doing their job. It's not personal. They're not trying to badger you. And if you will listen through your career to defense attorneys, you will learn a lot. I've learned more about my job by listening to great defense attorneys, and they teach me something every time I get on that stand, and I never make those mistakes again. So I would just recommend that. I thought everybody did a really good job. The prosecution, even though you lost a jury verdict, I thought you guys did a really good job as well. Because you're not lawyers yet. Obviously, you're interested in going to law school, and I think all of you have the potential to be great attorneys or judges. So all of you did a really great job.
Jim, you want to say anything?
Yeah, I guess what really intrigued me was, I served on a jury, a court-martial panel, a couple of them when I was in the military on active duty, but since becoming a civilian, I've never had the opportunity to actually deliberate with a jury. And so this was the chance for me to at least do something a little bit like that, and observe the interaction among people back there deliberating. I thought that was the best part of it for me.
All right, Ryan, David, Josh, Allie, you guys?
I'll say something real quick. A lot of it, good organization. It looked like you guys put in a lot of hard work talking with your witnesses and working with your witnesses. Nobody really looked stumped or confused or vexed. People did, a good job on cross-examination. Nobody admitted, that they did it. There was no smoking gun, no matlock moments, and that's good. That's good because that means that all the witnesses were well prepared. The only constructive criticism that I would offer is that when you're doing these and when you're analyzing problems, even if you don't go on to law school, you got to look at the big picture, and you can't get bogged down in the minutia. I think it's, we all agree that she had a very dirty house and that had a lot of pornography.
Porn and dirt.
we had some questions as to whether it was FayettevilleGangbang.com.gov or .org. But that's
.org.
Oh, But that's a detail, and when you're under time constraints like this, you got to make sure you highlight the high points of your case and the high points of your theory, so that way that's conveyed to us, and we don't get bogged down on getting, the fourth witness we have that explains to us what swinging is. That's too many times. You need to get to your theory, get to the meat and potatoes, and don't worry so much about salt and pepper, especially when you only have 2.5, 3 hours to do it.
Carl, anybody else?
I will say that I think if we had been presented with more background information or evidence on the relationship between the mother and the daughter, if the mother had a track history of doing things with her daughter, influencing her daughter, prompting her daughter to take certain actions, I think that might have led me at least to connect the dots, or to feel the prosecution had connected the dots for us.
It's interesting because they have the actual trial transcripts, and nowhere in there did either side connect those dots.
As all of you probably knew beforehand, as you surely know now, this was a real case. This really happened. This was a sensational case for a lot of different reasons. A man killed in his house, the pornography, the swinging aspects of it. I understand that there were a lot of people in Fayetteville that were very nervous that they might be subpoenaed and the gangbangers would testify. I mean, that really happened. I mean, there were people who were afraid that they were going to be found out that they had done this. Jeffrey, who, after he went back to Germany, I told the witness that played him, the student that played him, that he was in a lot of trouble with the military when he got back. He thought, well, I'm going to go back and everything's going to be fine. It wasn't fine. And I applaud Methodist and Wendy and this class for taking this actual case with a certain degree of controversy here, and bad language and bad acts and things. This is real life. This is not the first one we've had down here like this, and it won't be the last. I mean, this is just Cumberland County. I mean, there's bad stuff that goes on down here all the time. I will tell you that one disadvantage they have when they take a real life case, moot court cases, ones that are just made up, they're usually based on some type of case. But when they're made up, there's lots of good things for this side, and lots of good things for this side, and lots of bad things for this side, and lots of bad things for this side, and they usually have the same amount of witnesses, and it's more compressed. So it's more difficult for Ms. Vonnegut to have them do this, for her to prepare it and for them to do it. but to me, it's so much better. It's so real. And I applaud Wendy and her class. I think they all did a great job. And y'all didn't hear this, but I say the same thing this year or this semester, because I do it twice a year, don't I?
Well, every
Say the
year, but
same-
next year we'll be doing this in the fall and spring, but we'll do a civil trial in the fall.
I say the same thing every time. Some of y'all were better than some of the attorneys I see every day. And that's great for y'all, it's not so good for the attorneys. I'm very impressed, and I appreciate it. I would like, if without embarrassing anybody, the one holdout, if he or she was willing to say what it was about the case that they couldn't quite come to the same verdict. Were they not sure, or did they think the prosecution had proved it, or does that person want to exercise their right to remain silent?
I think that person, which is not me, just.
Oh, my graduate student. Why did you hold out? She does not hold out negotiations. Yeah, I teach her on Thursday nights at Webster MBA, so.
I just felt that there was too many unanswered questions, but I felt like the proof was there. We knew of the insurance policy, although we didn't. They never told us who the beneficiary was. Well,
And then you know about the military benefits that she was no doubt going to get. And I was wondering whether somebody familiar with that might bring that into the jury.
There was the issue with the residue from the test, the test.
Yeah, that confused me.
And what someone explained to me, because when the evidence was presented, and I'm thinking, okay, if she has the residue, she must have done it. Where was the residue? Was it on her hand, on her elbow? It didn't tell me. But when you tell me there's, the residue is there, I'm assuming maybe she could have. But we weren't given that information, just left with to assume. And
Thank you for sharing that.
There was evidence.
Allie and David, what did you guys say? This is your first mock trial.
It was good.
I mean, I agree with everything that we had said. I mean, I think she did it, but I couldn't believe the evidence that was introduced that she did do it. And like they said, if it was played more on the life insurance policy and who the beneficiary was and all of the things that they had mentioned, then yes, I would have gone the same way.
And I don't know too many teenagers that young with enough money to pay off a hitman.
Actually, I bet you'll agree with me. We've had some really bad cases here in Cumberland County with teens. I mean, seriously, we've had some real, Errol, have you seen it? I mean, Jim, you probably, we've had some really bad teen cases here. So nothing surprises me with teen. I'm more scared of a teenager with a gun than an adult, because they do not think at all about the consequences. So that, I mean, and I will tell you this, we did watch the A&E clip and 2020 clip, and they interviewed Joe Shannon, because she's in jail. She was offered a plea. She said, no, I didn't do it. I'm not taking the plea. So she got life without parole. Her daughter pled. That's why she threw mom under the bus. And so she's in jail. She'll get out, Jim, I think she's like in her
22 or 5 years, something like
yeah.
that.
So she'll be in her 30s, 40s when she gets out. They interviewed both of them, and what was interesting to me was that Joan, they said, Joan, do you have anything you'd like to say to your daughter? And she goes, I want her to know I love her. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean for her life to be this way. And then they interviewed the daughter. And Elizabeth couldn't even look at the camera. And I don't know how to say anything, but she kind of wanted to have that gang kind of mouth on her. And she was just like, I don't got nothing to say to her. And it kind of makes me wonder, because they did interview the sister and the mother, and they said when the time they met Elizabeth, she was very manipulative. So if you watch A&E or 2020, well, 2020 makes you think, I don't know. But then we watch the A&E and it's like, no, mom was in on it. I mean, it's how it's all presented. It really is. But it's interesting. And I really want to thank Alex back there. Stand up, Miss Alex in the white shirt. I have two Alexes. The reason we got this case is A&E called me in the fall. And they said, Miss Vonnegut, do you have a student that'd be willing to come to the courthouse? We will pay them to make copies of all the evidence and all the transcripts. So I said, yeah, Alex. So literally, I knew it would be okay because Alex had done her internship with Judge Ammons, and Judge Tucker, who's our clerk of courts, knew her. So I knew they'd feel comfortable with someone they knew doing this. So she's doing all this, and she's telling me this. And I'm like, God, this would be really a good case for them. So I called Judge Tucker, and I said, Judge Tucker, may my students have the transcripts and everything? Can we take this to court, you know, do our mock trial? She said, yes, you may. So, I mean, Alex saw the sheets. There were, he took, the husband was very much into this. And he took over 1,000 pictures of her having sex with not just one or two, but many men. And I guess the pictures were so bad that when they were sent to the Court of Appeals, they did something I think is unthinkable. They destroyed them. And there are no copies. So they just
destroy evidence?
They did.
Burn it.
They got it.
Yeah.
It's a Court of Appeals of North Carolina. So, I mean, there were other pictures of the videotapes and of the magazines. But I mean, it was just, and part of the, when they did the testimony, one of the neighbors asked if they could go into the house because his family was coming and they didn't want the family to see all of this. And they got permission. I think they took like 4 bags of garbage of all this adult entertainment out. And that was just what they saw. That was nothing like what was on the computer. So whoever did the CSI on the computer got quite a show tonight. I understand.
And it was not just tapes and videos and pictures, it was implements.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right.
These people were into wild stuff.
So, I first of all want to say thank you to Judge Ammons. Every year he has been doing this for us. I don't know if he's kept all the cards that we've given him all the years, but I need to make a frame for him because since he's been doing this so long, some of the young attorneys that have sat at this table are now attorneys. And some of the witnesses that were law enforcement are now law enforcement. And he's like, do you know that student of yours? He is now a detective, you know? And so it's really kind of neat to see you guys go on. I do want to say that you guys did a great job. This was tough. I throw you in there. Chaz, I knew you were so nervous. If you could have seen her leg under the table, but you did a great job. Caleb, this team here, I have to tell you, they've never, ever, ever, ever done this. Caleb's a freshman. Chaz has done high school mock trial. Ricky's never done this. Taylor's not even in the class. I asked her to help them because they needed someone who had done a mock trial, and she has done a mock trial. So these guys, I have to give them a lot of credit because that's really tough to do what they did. And Caleb was so nervous, but you did a great job. All of you did. This team, this is hard for me because Kara and Megan are my seniors. I have had them since they were freshmen. I remember recruiting. Yeah, but let me.
You thought you were.
But the difference is they have done litigation. They've done this before. And Carla, you sat on that trial for me. So, and Jordan here's a ringer. I recruited Jordan on purpose to come to Methodist University because I judged the Wade Bird High School mock trials. And for 2 years, I watched him. And Brian, were you with me when you were, I don't know if you watched him, he was with Village. But anyway, I went up to him and I said, where are you going to college? And he goes, I don't know. I said, you're going to Methodist.
H2O, baby.
Yeah. And so, I begged him, he came, he's a sophomore. Taylor and Ricky are seniors as well. Taylor, I watched grow up. And she, in the last law and legal class, and you might remember, we had a death penalty case, and I could have killed the attorney that was defending because we had a great witness, and she just didn't do what she was supposed to, and I just, Taylor, please go do the direct. And she did. She just 10-4 did it. When I asked her if she would take time out of her schedule, she did, and I can't thank her enough. I will miss her. I hope she goes on to law school or graduate school because I think she'll be awesome. Ricky, I've had you all through, and it's been fun to see you grow. And to see you go on to law school. He's going to take a year off, and that's fine with me. Get on ready for that LSAT. And I just have to announce, because Miss Megan doesn't know this yet. Last year, something special happened with legal studies. One of my board members, years ago, helped donate all the money that got this program going. He also donated the money to get this program approved by the ABA. And last year, we lost him to a heart attack. And he was my mentor. Both his daughters for my alumni, one actually worked for my husband. And I wanted to do something to honor him. And so last year was the first year we did it, and we have established the honorary Bob Dunn Legal Studies Student of the Year Award. And I think it's appropriate that her mom and dad are here, but this year's winner will be Miss Megan Jones. Because Taylor, you guys have done a lot. I mean, if I could pick more than one, I would. But I look at everything, and I will tell you, you guys have done a phenomenal job. I will miss all of you. It's been fun to watch you grow up. It's fun to see you go on and do everything. And for those of you who want more of this fun, I will tell you, in the fall, we are doing litigation. Judge Ammons will hear a civil trial. And I'm going to make this to you. If I have enough justice students, I really, really have a wonderful case of excessive force. But I really want to make sure we have enough law enforcement that would make it interesting to be in there. Litigation is open. It's a good class. It's going to be offered on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays at 12 noon. I encourage all of you to get in there because it's actually, we do everything in class. So unlike here, they have to spend a lot of time outside of class. We do everything in class. So I hope you look at doing it because it really gives you the civil aspect. You know, Errol, have you ever been sued civilly as a law enforcement officer?
Yes, ma'am, twice, federal court.
Yeah, so you have to know that civil aspect. You think as a law enforcement officer you only need to know criminal? No, you need to know civil. And so we will be doing that in the fall. I want to thank Dr. C for coming because I appreciate him, our department chair. And I just want to say I'm proud of all of you. You guys really hit it out of the ballpark. I'm really proud that the great job you did. I asked a lot from you, and you did it. And I can't thank all of you enough. So I will see you on Monday. I want to say thank you. Make sure we clean everything up, and I want to thank Judge Ammons. I want to thank our jury because they've taken time out.